Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Grand Line. Heroic Spirit of the Straw Hat Pirates. Chapter 61. Yes, but now you should be responsible for helping to control the ship. Nami sighed. Although Sanji's strength is pretty good, Nami doesn't think Sanji can be of much help before she has obtained the Heroic Spirit template. After all, the Navy on the opposing Navy warship using moonsteps to chase them was obviously not a weakling. In addition, Sauron was unable to use his full strength for a while because of his battle with Hawkeye. In terms of firepower, the melee is no match for naval warships. The two sides have been able to maintain a stalemate until now entirely due to Luffy's outstanding performance and Usopp's outstanding performance. Thinking of this, Nami turned her head and glanced at Luffy, who had entered the heroic spirit mimicry and second gear state not far away. Then he glanced at Usopp, who had also entered King's heroic spirit mimicry at some point. He stood at the stern of the ship with his arms folded and a calm expression, looking at the Navy calmly, and the sound of Emperor engine was loudly heard. It can be said that the main reason why the Navy did not rush forward was because of Usopp. Thinking of this, Nami rolled her eyes, quickly ran to Usopp's side, and said with admiration, "Usopp, you are the strongest person besides Rossi. Now that Rossi is entangled, use your invincible Emperor engine to find a solution." Usopp glanced at Nami after hearing this, and immediately understood what Nami meant. "Sorry Nami, I feel like helping Luffy, but I don't want to have anti-air power like Luffy. But don't worry, after they arrive on the melee, I will deal with them one by one." At this point, the sound of the Emperor's engine expanded again, and in conjunction with his majestic face as he entered King's heroic spirit mimicry, the sailors who were walking on moon steps in the sky couldn't help but frown. "What should I do? That Long Nose seems very strong. That woman said that Long Nose is the strongest one besides Rossi. Is he stronger than Luffy? Isn't Luffy the captain? Since Rossi, the vice captain, is stronger than Luffy as the captain, then it makes sense that someone with a long nose is also stronger than the captain. Then what should we do? Should we try him? No matter what, we have to stop them. Everyone, I'm going to try." A female marine took the initiative to step forward and kicked several times in Usopp's direction. When Luffy saw this scene, although he wanted to go up and help, he was already entangled and couldn't leave for a while. He could only watch the wind blade formed by Arashi's feet cutting towards Usopp. Usopp looked at the Arashi foot wind blade getting closer and closer, his heartbeat began to beat faster and faster, and the sound became louder and louder. The powerful deterrent force made the female sailor who took action feel heart palpitations. Just when she thought Usopp was about to take action, Zoro, who was not very light-handed, suddenly rushed over and stopped the Lan Zhao wind blade with several knives regardless of his injuries and fatigue. "Usopp, don't push yourself too hard. Leave this to me." Zoro stood up straight and glanced at Usopp, who had his head lowered and his body trembling slightly, intending to persuade him to leave temporarily. However, before he could finish his words, a black lightning flashed across Usopp's body, and a powerful aura erupted from him, directly interrupting Zoro's words. After this aura passed over Zoro and Nami, it quickly included all the Navy. As this, the domineering look of a king. The female marine who had attacked Usopp before had her eyes widened, and her body stagnated and almost fell from the air. "You scumbag, give me your clothes back." Gion shouted sharply, swung his sword and slashed at Luochi, who was in an invisible state. "Haha, you were really uncool, Ms. Gion. Didn't you say that you were mentally prepared to be stolen by me?" Luochi smiled and threw Gion's clothes away. In order to try his best to get rid of Gion and Luochi naturally didn't mind using the stealing skill again. For this reason, although Gion looked unchanged from the outside, only she knew that she was much cooler now. Boom. At this moment, a powerful aura came from the sea and passed by Luochi, Gion and a domineering look. Suru and Gion were slightly startled, and immediately lowered their heads to look at the sea. Good opportunity. Seeing this, Luochi's eyes lit up, and without hesitation, he turned his body upside down and rushed towards the sea. By the time Gion and Crane reacted, Luochi had already broken through their encirclement and rushed out more than 10 meters away. "Stop!" Gion and Huzuru shouted loudly. Regardless of who was bursting with domineering aura, they stepped their legs in the air and used moon steps to catch up. "Haha, I'm sorry, you two are not fast enough to worry me. If you really want to capture me, let Admiral Kizaru do it. Luo Qi turned around and looked at Gion and he with a big smile. The muscles in his legs suddenly swelled and he stepped on the air. At the same time, the prayer bow in his hand shot out a rain of arrows that enveloped Gion and Crane. In an instant, Luo Qi's speed increased again, and he distanced himself from Crane and Gion. During the CP9 period, Luo Qi knew the importance of speed. Even if he couldn't win, he could still be invincible with the advantage of speed. Therefore, among the 6 styles of the Navy, Luo Qi spent the longest time on shaving and moon step. In contrast, on the iron block, Luo Qi only reached the level of barely learning. Gion and Crane looked gloomy and chased after Luo Qi at the fastest speed, but they were one step late after all. When Luo Qi approached the sea, he directly raised the prayer bow and aimed at the direction of the Navy warships and the female Navy who were using moon steps in the air and might attack the Mary at any time. Gion, who knew the trouble of Luo Qi's poisonous arrows, had no choice but to slow down the speed of chasing Luo Qi and waved more than 10 swords in the direction of the Navy warships. He planned to use Flying Slash to stop Razi's rain of arrows. And Crane used his fruit ability to swing a stream of light barrage towards the female Navy in the air. While Crane and Gion were busy saving their partners, Rosie quickly landed on the deck of the Mary. Thank you for your hard work, Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Sanji. Usopp, you did a good job. I never thought that you would become the second man in our pirate group to have the domineering color domineering. Now you are undoubtedly a brave sea warrior. Rosie unveiled the cloak of the King of No Face, and showed his figure in front of Usopp and others. Seeing Rosie suddenly appear, Sanji immediately widened his eyes and rushed over with envy and jealousy. You really have the ability to be invisible. Have you eaten the color fruit? Sanji, let's talk about this topic later. We need to leave here first. Roki dispersed the faceless king and the prayer bow, turned around and looked at Gion, who had come to his senses and was about to continue chasing, and Crane, who was already standing in the air above the Mary. It seems that I have to call for help. Single quote. Roki thought about it for a while, and soon realized that relying on the method of avoiding Gion and others last time would not work. In such a close distance, Gion and Crane would most likely not give him the opportunity to use the Purgatory Unparalleled Explosive Heat Wave Cannon to push the boat. And relying on the remaining physical strength, even if the Purgatory Unparalleled Explosive Heat Wave Cannon is used, the boat cannot be pushed too far. It would be better to use a plan that can directly intercept Crane, Gion and others here than using the Purgatory Unparalleled Explosive Heat Wave Cannon. The domineering color of the king, and it's an excellent domineering color of the king. Should I say that he is worthy of being the cadre of the Red Hair Pirates, the son of Jesus Bu? You have awakened the domineering color of the king at such a young age. You are as dangerous as that Rosie. You must be sent to the Impel Down Castle. At this time, Crane suddenly spoke, looking at Usopp who was in the mimicry of King's heroic spirit. Even Crane, looking at Usopp's majestic face now, couldn't help but feel a little solemn. I advise you to give up, it will kill people. Usopp folded his hands, raised his head and looked at Crane calmly. Wow, are you saying that we will die, Usopp? I think you should understand without me saying it, Navy. Usopp looked at Crane, and then looked at Gion in the other direction. Of course it's me, idiot. Single quote. Usopp thought to himself. Unlike his calm appearance, his heart was almost about to collapse. Although he has awakened the Conqueror's Haki, using this power is also very consuming for him. He is still able to stand now, which shows that he is determined. Usopp, you don't have to do anything. Next, leave it to our helpers. Roche patted Usopp on the shoulder and said with a smile. Helpers, not only the Navy, but even Rock's partners were a little confused about what he said. Roche smiled mysteriously and pointed to the sea in front of the Mary. Everyone looked at what Roche pointed at, and soon they found something strange. Under the sea, a series of shadows were moving quickly. Little guys, see you then, go help our friends. At this time, a heroic female voice suddenly came from the bottom of the sea. With the appearance of the voice, a huge ship with a total length of more than 37 meters actually rushed out directly from the bottom of the sea. And at the bow of the ship, a man in red clothes with wine red hair was standing with a gun. That's Francis Drake. Rosie, did you call her? Luffy and Nami grabbed Rosie's arm and said excitedly. Nami, who had seen the heroic spirit demonstration of Francis Drake, naturally knew how powerful she was. Thinking of the power of Francis Drake, Nami only felt relieved. And Luffy was looking forward to seeing Francis Drake use her laser weapons. The appearance of Francis Drake did not disappoint Luffy and Nami. As soon as he appeared, Drake raised his double guns and pointed them at Gion and the Navy warships opposite. With the sound of Drake's gunshot, several laser cannons were fired. Although Gion reacted, he was not injured by the laser cannon. But the Navy warship behind her was not so lucky. Caught off guard, the hull of the Navy warship immediately suffered multiple damages. Ms. Nami, do you know that generous big sister? At this time, Sanji quickly ran to Nami's side and looked at Francis Drake not far away with an admiring look on his face. Nami heard the voice and glanced at Sanji with disdain. On the other side, the 29th Navy. Suru, Gion and others looked at Francis Drake, who suddenly appeared and had powerful firepower, and their hearts sank at the same time. Who is this woman, and why did she suddenly appear and attack us? She is the helper that Luochi called. This woman is not from the Straw Hat Pirates. No, there are different pirate flags on that ship. This should be from another pirate group. Strange, what's wrong with their cannons? Why are they shooting lasers? And how did they manage to get out from the bottom of the sea? Is it coated? The bottom of the sea. Wait, those shadows on the bottom of the sea, aren't they all ships? As if to answer the Navy's question, the sea area centered on the Mary suddenly boiled. Immediately, dozens of small boats rose up and defended both sides of the Mary. Perhaps because they felt that this was not enough, some small boats actually took off directly and floated above the Mary, with the gun turrets pointing directly at Crane and others above. What? The ship can fly. This time, even the knowledgeable Crane was surprised. Can the gun turrets of these ships also fire the lasers just now? At this moment, Crane suddenly had a very bad premonition. Looking at the sailboats with the Mary as the center, spreading out on both sides and pointing countless guns at the Navy warships, he looked solemn, not knowing whether to continue to house the Mary to leave, or to return to Gion to help Gion resist the possible stormy bombardment. Soon, the sailboats that pointed their guns at he helped her make a decision. Francis Drake snapped his fingers. The small boats surrounding the Mary fired at the same time, and more than 10 golden lasers flew towards he and the Marines around her. Seeing this scene, he frowned and quickly used his ability to construct a layer of shield in front of him. It's so heavy, such firepower is stronger than the cannons of the Navy warships. He frowned and waved to the Navy around him, signaling them to return to the Navy warship. After the female Navy around her left, he turned around and returned to Gion. Sister He, why did you come back at this time? Rosie and the others. Now is not the time to talk about this, Gion. These ships give me a very bad feeling. He interrupted Gion, looked at Francis Drake with a serious face, and asked. Who are you, and what is your relationship with the Straw Hat Pirates behind you? Hearing this, Francis Drake smiled generously and turned to look at Rosie standing at the bow of the Mary behind him. Rosie, this is the first time I meet you. You can leave now. According to the commission, I will help you stop these Navy. Thank you, Drake. I really troubled you this time. You're welcome, but if you really want to thank me, call me over at the banquet next time, haha. Well, it's a deal. Rosie nodded heavily at Francis Drake, turned around and signaled Nami to leave. After the battles with Hawkeye, Crane and Gion, he had very little physical strength left. Using the Noble Phantasm, Golden Deer and Stormy Night, and summoning Francis Drake together, had consumed all of Rosie's physical strength. It was no exaggeration to say that if he were to fight Gion now, he might only be able to choose to use the resurrection function in the Sato Kazuma template to revive once. I won't let you escape. Gion saw the conversation between Francis Drake and Rosie. At this moment, seeing that everyone on the Mary was planning to control the Mary to leave, she wanted to rush forward immediately because she had a strong obsession with Rosie. That's not okay. Francis Drake waved his hand and summoned 3 turrets on his left and right and above his head. Facing Gion were 3 laser shells, forcing Gion to block with a knife, and also forcing her back to her original position. My name is Francis Drake, a pirate hired by Roche. Then, remember my name and die. Francis Drake turned around and said a few words to Guion and Crane, and then issued an order for all ships including the treasure house Golden Deer to fire. For a moment, countless golden lasers that were enough to snatch the sun's glory shot straight at Crane, Guion, and the Navy warships behind them. Faced with this overwhelming firepower, Crane and Guion knew that if they avoided it, the Navy warships behind them would inevitably be sunk. Those weaker Marines simply could not withstand such an attack. In desperation, the two could only use their own methods to extinguish the firepower of Francis Drake's treasure. Wow, you actually carried my treasure down. The people in this world are really not simple. It looks like it will be a protracted war. However, these female soldiers are really good. I wish I had such a crew before. Francis Drake tapped his shoulder with the barrel of his gun, looking a little surprised. With her eyesight, she could naturally see Guion and Crane, and intercepted her artillery fire with her sword and the strange ability on her palm. Even the naval warships on the opposite side could take the opportunity to fire shells at the Golden Deer fleet. Of course, such shells would soon be shot down by the flintlock in Drake's hand. Well, I'll have some fun with you. Drake pointed the flintlocks in both hands at Guion, who was gradually emerging and slashing at the Golden Deer fleet. Then he turned his head to look at the Mary behind him and shouted to Rosie. Leave quickly, my employer, and remember to keep your promise and buy me a good drink later. Rosie nodded heavily and patted Luffy beside him. Luffy, we should go. Don't worry, as a summoned heroic spirit, Drake will not die. Besides, I still owe her a banquet. Luffy looked at Francis Drake deeply after hearing this, and then turned to look at Nami, Zoro and others behind him. Everyone, set sail. On the sea, the Mary, led by Nami, began to sail forward quickly. At the stern of the Mary, Roche looked at Guion and Crane in the distance with a calm face. Because they were intercepted by Francis Drake, the two could not find an opportunity to continue to intercept the Mary for a while. Unless they were willing to ignore the life and death of the Navy warships behind them. After seeing Guion's eyes sweeping towards him, Rock's mouth corners slightly raised, and raised his right hand and waved his fingers in his direction. Guion's face turned cold. How could she not see what Roki's action meant? It was a gesture of stealing from her. Although she was angry, Guion had no choice but to watch Roki go farther and farther with the progress of the Mary, and finally disappear on the sea level. At the same time, on the other side, a few hundred meters away from the battlefield, a raft stopped in place, and on it stood a swordsman with a huge black knife hanging behind him. If Roki was here, he would be surprised that the world's #1 swordsman had not left yet. It's really interesting. This Rosie really has a lot of power. What a pity. If you can concentrate on studying kendo, you might be stronger in swordsmanship. But with such a person teaching you, Zoro will also improve faster. And the boy with the straw hat. I wonder what Shanks will think when he knows that there is a person like Rosie around him. Hawkeye looked at the direction where the Mary disappeared with interest, and then looked at Guion and Crane who were stopped by Francis Drake, and turned around to drive the raft away. Half an hour later, the Navy headquarters. The Marshal's office. Warrior, who was busy browsing many documents, was suddenly awakened by the ringing of a den mushi. He pushed his glasses, put down the documents in his hand and answered the den mushi. Soon, a voice that Warrior was very familiar with came from the den mushi. Sengoku, it's me, Suru. It's Xiaohei, you called me at this time, have you already captured Rosie and his group? Unfortunately, we didn't catch Rosie and Luffy's people. In addition, we may not be able to continue the mission of capturing the Straw Hat Pirates for the time being. Huh, why, did you suffer a huge loss because of the capture of the Straw Hat Pirates? I guess so. Our Navy warships have been destroyed. It may take some time to find a suitable warship for us. In addition, I think we may not be able to catch Rosie alone. I actually let you say this, Xiaohei, what happened on your side? Actually, it's like this. Suru took a deep breath and told in detail about Rosie's battle with Hawkeye, and then fought with them again, Usopp's outbreak of Conqueror's Haki, the appearance of Francis Drake, and the destruction of their warships by Francis Drake's fleet during the battle with them. The more Sengoku listened, the more he felt something was wrong. After a while, his brows furrowed together. That Rosie was able to fight Hawkeye to a draw. And he fought with you for such a long time after that. Can he be invisible and use troublesome poison? Even after that, he called in the dangerous man named Francis Drake. This woman controls a fleet with even more powerful firepower than the Demon Slayer Order. And that Jesus Boo's son was able to scare some of your Marines. And he was able to display the powerful Conqueror's Haki. And Garp's grandson also showed his outstanding strength. Xiaohei, are you sure you are not kidding me? After a while, after sorting out his thoughts, Sengoku asked the crane opposite the Den Den Mushi. Sengoku, do you think I would make such a joke? The crane said, okay, it's my fault, but this makes the Straw Hat Pirates even more dangerous. And that Francis Drake actually has a fleet that can dive into the sea and fly in the air, and has an unclear relationship with that Rossi. For these people, we must increase the bounty. Xiaohei, you guys go to rest first. After the rest, I hope you can meet up with Garp. If the Straw Hat Pirates appear in Rogue Town, do your best to catch them. Such dangerous people must not be allowed to go to the Grand Line. Warring States said solemnly, understood, I will try my best to get to Rogue Town, but I can't guarantee whether I can get there in time. After these two encounters, that man Luochi shouldn't be stupid enough to wait for us to get the boat and rush to Rogue Town. He said as he glanced at the dilapidated warship on the sea. However, Ling was fortunate that although the warship was destroyed, they did not suffer too many casualties. Those who were hit by Luochi's poisonous arrows also happened to be cured by her ability to wash the fruits. Try your best, Xiaohei. I will also convey the belief to Garp. If that guy is serious, he can at least arrest Razi. Warring States said, and after understanding some details with he hung up the phone with he and dialed Garp's number instead. At the same time, on the other side, Meili, Nami, no problem, no Navy warships were found behind. Usopp jumped down from the observation deck of the Mary and gave an, okay, gesture to Nami. Hearing this, Nami couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. It was so good, I thought we were dead. Nami patted her chest, and she still felt heart palpitations when she thought of the situation just now. We are lucky. Fortunately, Razi called out Drake. Her ship is really awesome. Luffy laughed without any trace of nervousness. Speaking of that Miss Drake, is it really okay to leave her there? What if she is arrested? Sanji asked worriedly as he walked up to everyone carrying a large plate of rice balls. Don't worry, Sanji, Miss Francis Drake is the heroic spirit summoned by Rossi. Even if he dies in battle, he will just return to the Hall of Valor. As long as Rossi is willing, he can still summon Francis Drake. Usopp picked up 2 rice balls and stuffed them into his mouth while saying, heroic spirits, Hall of Heroes, I've been a little confused since just now. What is the so-called heroic spirit, a dragon? Sanji picked up 2 rice balls and walked towards Luochi, who was sitting on the edge of the boat with his eyes closed. Thank you, Sanji. Luochi took the rice ball and immediately ate one while replenishing his energy. Generally, the so-called heroic spirits are the beings transformed into heroes whose great achievements have been left as legends after death and have become objects of belief. The Hall of Valor is where these beings stay. Don't look so surprised, Sanji, you were right, Francis Drake is indeed a figure in the past. But don't worry, I still owe her a banquet, and I will summon her again later. When the time comes, I will trouble you to show off your best skills to entertain her. Of course, I will definitely create the most perfect and best banquet for Miss Francis Drake. Sanji clenched his hands into fists and said with red hearts in his eyes. But soon, he looked at Luochi with jealousy. Why were you able to summon Miss Drake? If only I could summon her. Razi, can you teach me how to summon her? Hearing this, Rossi couldn't help but look at Sanji speechlessly. I was able to summon her because of the special noble phantasm possessed by Drake. Not to mention whether you can get Drake's template, even if you get her template, it is extremely difficult to summon her. After all, you are not like me who can use all the skills of heroic spirits as long as you are strong enough. Of course, Luochi did not say this. After all, you are the only one who can summon her. You are so enviable. By the way, they said you have a color fruit that can make people invisible. Do you still have that fruit? Well, you have the ability to become invisible anyway, so why not give me the color fruit? That's my dream. And I heard from Usopp and the others that the color fruit can make the hull invisible, right? If I eat the color fruit, I will be able to help everyone in the same situation as before. Sanji still looked desperate just now, but after mentioning the color fruit, he regained his energy. A pair of eyes stared straight into Luoqi's eyes, as if afraid that he would refuse. Luoqi looked at Sanji with a smile. For Luoqi, who was familiar with the plot of the original work, it was impossible to know Sanji's true purpose of obtaining the color fruit. On the side, Nami also looked at Sanji suspiciously. Let's not rush this. Rather than the color fruit, let's take a look at the power of the heroic spirit you can obtain, Sanji. Luoqi smiled. Heroic spirit. Sanji was stunned for a moment, and then he felt the world spinning. CJEF. When he came to his senses again, he had arrived in a dark space of heroic spirits. What's this? Sanji looked around, and his eyes were quickly attracted by the shining, technologically advanced heroic spirit panel in front of him. Ahem, let me explain it to you, Sanji. At this time, Usopp came over with a proud look on his face. He raised his hand and pointed at the names on the panel and said, "Do you see the names on these panels? You will choose one of the three as your heroic spirit template. Like me, I chose King, Zoro chose Kokushibo, and so on. Let me see, your three choices are Shuru Emiya with the attribute of Cook, Lee Nali Lee with the attribute of Leg Skills, and Master Kame with the attribute of Lusting After Women." Aside, Nami folded her arms and frowned and said, "Lusting after women really fits your style, Sanji. By the way, you want to obtain the color fruit, isn't it because of this attribute of yours?" Hearing this, Sanji quickly turned around and explained to Nami. "Ms. Nami, believe me, I am definitely not a lusting after women, I just admire and respect every lady very much. I absolutely don't have any unreasonable thoughts, there must be something wrong with this panel." Sanji said, "Really? How about you just point your finger at the 4 words, lusting after women? Can clicking on the 4 words, lusting after women, clear up the misunderstanding in Miss Nami's mind?" "I understand. I'll click it now." After Sanji finished speaking, he raised his hand and pressed on the word, lusting after women, above the 3 words, Master Kame. At this time, he didn't know how ashamed he would feel next. As the heroic spirit space trembled, the originally dark space had light. Sanji rubbed his eyes and looked around. The next moment, his eyes widened. Is this me?" Sanji pointed to the front, and a man wearing a black suit and with golden hair shouted. "Yes, he is indeed you." Rosie came over at this time. He patted Sanji on the shoulder and said with a very regretful expression, "My heroic spirit space will never be wrong. Since it has detected that you have the attribute of being greedy for women, then you must be a person who is greedy for women. And these past pictures about you are the evidence." After Luoqi finished speaking, Sanji in the picture had already taken action. He looked wretched, and after looking around to confirm that there was no one around, he actually sneaked into the girls' bathroom. Of course, he was soon beaten and scolded by the lady inside. At this time, Sanji in the picture not only did not feel pain, but even looked satisfied. He even muttered that if he could have the transparent fruit, he could see more and more. "So, is this the misunderstanding you said, Sanji? Get the transparent fruit to sneak into the girls' bathroom?" "No, Miss Nami, I can explain." Sanji's mind worked quickly, trying to find a reason to convince Nami. After all, this is related to whether he can get the color fruit. But before he could explain, the picture of the heroic spirit space turned again. The protagonist in the picture is still Sanji, and the content of the picture is basically the same. "Sanji, are you going to explain now?" Nami folded her arms and looked at Sanji with a serious face. Sanji turned his head and looked at Nami in front of him. For a moment, he couldn't find any excuse to convince Nami. "It seems that you have nothing to say. Mr. Vice Captain, as the only woman in the Straw Hat Pirates, I strongly request you not to give the color fruit to Sanji. Otherwise, I won't be able to take a bath in peace. If you give her the color fruit, I will remember it on your head every time I am peeped." Nami turned and looked at Rosie and said, "Sanji, you saw it, I can't do anything about it. Who told our captain, the only woman, not to let you use the color fruit? In that case, I'll keep this color fruit reluctantly, and give it to someone else who is willing to take the devil fruit in the future." Rosie shrugged and made the final decision in Sanji's desperate expression. Oh, no. Sanji fell to his knees, as if he had lost all hope of life. Sanji, think about it. Although you can't take the color fruit, you can't sneak into the girls' bathroom. But at least you can keep your ability to swim. Imagine, if a beautiful woman invites you to swim in the pool in the future, but you can't get in the water, isn't it a pity? Or, if a beautiful lady falls into the water, you can't save them, isn't it quite bad? Rosie squatted down, patted Sanji on the back, and comforted him. Rosie, you have the ability to be invisible, of course you can say these words. If I have the ability to be invisible, I can do more. Let alone go to the swimming pool, I can even sneak into the ladies' dressing room. Sanji said angrily, not noticing Nami, who was looking at him with a scumbag expression. By the way, Rosie, don't you have the cloak that can be invisible? Since you won't give me the color fruit, can you lend me your transparent cloak? Sanji suddenly stood up, grabbed Rosie's hand and said seriously. No, you can't lend it to him, Rosie. Before Rosie could reply, Nami stood up first. Ms. Nami, can't even my wish be fulfilled? Sanji looked at Nami pitifully. No, I don't want to worry about whether a lecher like you will suddenly appear around. But what about Rosie? Isn't Miss Nami worried about Rosie? He is different from you. You were right, Rosie. Hearing this, Rosie shrugged and smiled. Who knows, after all, I am a man who will steal even women's private clothes. Maybe one day I will be beastly and use my invisibility to sneak into your bathroom, Nami. Nami blinked, her mouth slightly raised, and smiled. Really? Then from today on, I will charge you 100,000 berries every day. Just consider it as your reward for peeping at me. After this, Sanji became even more desperate. Why does Miss Nami treat me differently from Rosie? Sanji slapped the deck with his hand and shouted miserably. Usopp, give up, Sanji, Rosie and Nami have a good relationship. Luffy, Sanji is really interesting. The rice balls are delicious too. Zoro, the rice balls are indeed good, but there is nothing else besides this advantage. Sanji, green algae head, what are you talking about, do you want to fight? Rosie saw that Sanji and Zoro were arguing again, and hurriedly intervened between the two. Sanji, don't waste time. Hurry up and make your choice. The sooner you choose your heroic spirit template, the sooner you can get familiar with the power of the heroic spirit. Rosie said, okay, since you said so. Sanji looked at the panel in front of him. I don't know if any of these three people will have the ability to be invisible. Until now, Sanji is still looking forward to gaining the ability to be invisible. Sanji raised his hand and pressed on the name of Shuru Emiya of the chef attribute, and soon the entire heroic spirit space trembled again. After the space settled down, a man with dark skin, white hair, wearing a red and black tight-fitting outfit and jacket appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, he was quietly cooking in the kitchen. Wow, the knife skills are good, and the expression on his face when dealing with the dishes is also very serious. He is indeed an excellent chef. Sanji walked to the projection of Shuru Emiya and watched Shuru Emiya's performance with interest. However, if this heroic spirit named Shuru Emiya has only these strengths, it won't be of much use to me. Sanji lit a cigarette and shook his head and said, in terms of cooking skills, Shuru Emiya's skills may not really help you, Sanji. But if it's about fighting, it may give you some inspiration. Of course, his fighting style is a little different from your current fighting style. It does have something in common with Usopp and Zoro's fighting uniforms. Roche smiled. Hearing Rock's words, Usopp and Zoro immediately showed more curiosity on their faces. The scene turned, and in a flash, the original kitchen disappeared, replaced by a fierce battlefield. One of the parties in the battle was naturally Shuru Emiya, and the other was a very tall and strong warrior holding a huge sword and axe. Shuru Emiya held two short swords, one black and one white, and flexibly wandered around the enemy. His sharp slashes fully demonstrated his rich combat experience. So, is this chef also a swordsman? Zoro walked to Rosie and asked curiously. Yes, and no. Rosie smiled mysteriously, and soon Zoro witnessed that the weapon in Shuru Emiya's hand was destroyed, but it was recast in an instant. Then, it seemed that he felt that the double swords could not do anything to the enemy. Shuru Emiya took a step back and jumped into the sky. Then he dispersed the broken sword in his hand and used his ability to build a longbow. He just pulled the longbow lightly, and countless red arrows attacked the enemy. So that's it, not only good at using a knife, but also good at using a bow and arrow. No wonder Rosie said that he has something in common with me and Zoro. But Rosie, what exactly is his ability? Why does it feel like he can make different weapons at will? Usopp asked curiously. Emiyashiru's ability is projection magic. He can project almost all the weapons he has seen. Whether it's a sword or a bow. As long as he has enough energy in his body, he can even project extremely dangerous weapons. For example, this pseudo-spiral sword in his hand. After Rossi finished speaking, Usopp immediately looked intently, just in time to see Shuru Emiya bending his bow and shooting the pseudo-spiral sword as an arrow. Boom! The huge explosion completely enveloped the enemy. Usopp looked at this scene in shock, his mouth growing to its maximum size. Is this still an arrow? Luochi, this is much stronger than the explosive arrow you gave me before. Razi, do you think I can make arrows like this? Usopp asked excitedly. Of course, Usopp, you can do it, I believe in you. The corner of Luochi's mouth raised, and he poured a bowl of poisonous chicken soup for Usopp without hesitation, and then continued. Of course, the abilities displayed by Emiyashuru now are only relatively ordinary abilities. In addition to these, he also has an ability called Unlimited Sword Control. There are almost all the reflections of the swords he has seen in his life. As Luochi's words fell, Emiyashuru put his right hand on his chest and muttered mysterious words quickly. After a while, a strong and dazzling light suddenly emitted with Emiyashuru as the center. The people at the scene closed their eyes unconsciously. When everyone opened their eyes again, they found that the scene had changed again, and they came to a world full of swords. Looking at the scene around them, Luffy and others ignored it for the time being. Zoro's eyes widened first. These swords are all sharp knives, no, even weapons at the level of big sharp knives. How many excellent weapons does this man possess? Zoro asked in surprise. These are not real weapons, they are just weapons that are infinitely close to the real thing and are made using the power of projection. Having said that, because they are infinitely close to the real thing, they are also quite powerful. And this world comes from the scene in Shuru Emiya's heart. The so-called unlimited sword control is the ability to project the inner scenes of Emiyashuru into the real world. Razi patted Zoro on the shoulder and smiled. Are they fakes? But even if they are fakes, these swords are enough to amaze the swordsman. Furthermore, the scene in Shuru Emiya's heart is actually the battlefield where the sword is buried. If possible, I really want to meet this man in person. Luochi, since you can take out the heroic spirit template of Emiyashuru, it proves that you also have Emiyashuru's abilities. In that case, it seems you have no reason to take away the sword of that naval woman named Gion. Zoro turned his head and looked at Razi with some confusion. The projected sword is a fake after all, but the famous sword in Gion's hand is the real thing. Even if you sell it, you can still make a lot of money. Those Marines have been chasing me for so long, there's no way they won't get some reward. Rossi shrugged and said, you can't say that he was. At that time, he didn't have the ability of Emiyashuru. It is even unknown whether he can obtain Shuru Emiya's abilities in the future. Everything depends on Sanji's choice. It's indeed a good ability, but it doesn't seem to be of much use to me. Compared to me, Zoro may be more suitable for this chef named Emiyashuru. I'd better choose between the other two people. Sanji shook his head and looked at Rossi. The projection magic mastered by Emiyashuru can help you strengthen your leather shoes. Indirectly, it can also enhance your kicks. But you were right, compared to this one, the other two may be more suitable for you. Luochi reached out to the heroic spirit panel in front of Sanji and motioned for him to continue making choices. Sanji touched his chin, and after thinking for a moment, he raised his finger and pointed at the name, Li Nali Li. Since the attribute is legs, I think this one should be quite suitable for me. While Sanji was chanting, the heroic spirit space shook again. In the blink of an eye, everyone came to the surface of Wangyang Sea. More than 10 meters away from them, a young and beautiful girl with dark green twin-tail hair jumped from a ship and rushed straight into the sky. Holy, activate, The girl groaned, and the black boots on her legs began to change rapidly. While becoming lighter, they also ignited 2 emerald green flames. The moment the black boots transformation was completed, the girl's speed increased again, and her body suddenly rose into the sky. As the girl's figure grew taller, 2 monsters with spherical bodies appeared in front of Luoqi and others. The girl leapt to the side of the monster, and with just 2 kicks, she directly smashed the monster's body, causing its body to collapse automatically. Her movements were as light as a butterfly, but her strength was enough to destroy the giant rock. Hey, take a closer look. Isn't this a beautiful girl? Luoqi, is that Miss Li Nali? Sanji's eyes were full of love, and he looked excitedly at the girl on the horizon. Hey, shouldn't you be surprised at her abilities at this time, Sanji? She's flying now. Usopp crossed his arms and looked at Sanji speechlessly. However, at this moment, Sanji was completely attracted by the girl's elegant figure and did not listen to Usopp's words at all. Rossi patted Sanji on the shoulder to signal him to calm down, and then said, "Yes, that one is Ms. Li Nali Li. I believe you also saw the boots on her legs. Those black boots are her weapons, containing a special crystal called Holy." The black boots transformed by the Holy Spirit gave Li Nali the ability to fly, and her kicks are also extremely powerful. Even a ship can probably be easily sunk by Li Nali. In addition, these black boots also give Li Nali the ability to control the wind, use sound acceleration, walk on the sea, and transform the black boots into a giant blade and use gravity acceleration to attack the enemy. As Luoqi's words fell, Li Nali's figure fell and stayed safely on the sea. Then, when the spherical monster appeared in front of her again, she kicked the monster in front of her twice from the air, releasing 2 tornado-like attacks to involve the monster. Awesome, I really want to have black boots like this, so I won't be afraid of falling into the sea. Luffy opened his mouth wide and looked excitedly at Li Nali, who rose into the air again and transformed a huge blade from her black boots to attack the monster from the air. I think her last move is pretty good, it's like a small meteorite. Zoro sighed. This move itself can increase gravity. Under certain conditions, it is possible to exert a falling force of tens of thousands of tons. It's not wrong to say it's a small meteorite. Besides, Luffy, forget it. It's hard for me to imagine you using black boots with rubber powers. Sanji, on the other hand, seems to be very suitable for using these black boots. Rossi turned to look at Sanji and said with a smile. Although Sanji has not made a choice yet, Luoqi already feels that Sanji will most likely choose Li Nali Li's heroic spirit template. Li Nali Li's leg skills are not very good, plus she also has a weapon called Black Boots. If Sanji inherits such an ability, even the initial power of the heroic spirit will be enough to soar Sanji's strength. At least, Sanji will become more threatening on the anti-air battlefield. After all, the aerial mobility brought by Black Boots is much stronger than the mobility brought by Moon Steps. Even though Rossi himself can fly using the Moon Steps, he is still looking forward to the flying ability of the Black Boots. As for the remaining heroic spirit template of Kamisenin, although he is powerful in terms of strength, his power is mostly expressed in boxing skills. Luoqi felt that the possibility of Sanji choosing him was much smaller than Li Nali. Although among the 3 templates of Emayashuru, Li Nali Li and Kamisenin, what Luoqi wanted most was Kamisenin's heroic spirit template. However, at this moment, Sanji was completely in lust mode, which made Rossi somewhat unclear as to whether he was seriously considering whether to inherit the heroic spirit panel of Li Nali Li. Luoqi shook his head helplessly and continued. How much power Li Nali's Black Boots can exert is related to her own synchronization rate with the Holy in the Black Boots. Li Nali in her current state, her synchronization rate with Shang Sheng is 86%. If the synchronization rate reaches 100%, Black Boots will undergo huge changes. After Luoqi finished speaking, the screen of the heroic spirit space turned again. Everyone looked closely and found that Li Nali was already in a larger battlefield. At this moment, she was holding a crystal emitting emerald green light in her hand. The next moment, the crystal liquefied, and Li Nali drank the liquefied crystal directly. After a burst of severe pain, a large amount of blood oozed from Li Nali's legs. Just when Sanji was worried and about to cry out, the blood seemed to come alive and formed a pair of bloody boots on Li Nali's legs. The next moment, Li Nali rose into the air and attacked the enemy with greater speed and strength than before. Is this blood turning into new boots? Nami looked at Razi doubtfully. To be precise, Sheng Sheng used Li Nali's blood as a carrier to form a new weapon. At this time, the synchronization rate between Li Nali and Sheng Sheng has reached 100%. Luo Qi said, raised his hand and snapped his fingers, directly cancelling Li Nali's skill demonstration screen. Upon seeing this, Sanji immediately looked over with regret. However, when he noticed that Nami was looking at him with a scum expression on her face, Sanji immediately trembled and his expression became serious and serious. Well, Ms. Li Nali's strength is quite good. She has the ability to focus on kicking, and she also has weapons that serve the kicking. I think I might not need to look at the next Kame Sennin template and directly inherit the power of Miss Li Nali Li. Sanji turned his head and said to Razi seriously. Sanji, let me remind you first, even if you choose Li Nali's template, you will not have a chance to summon her. Why can't you summon Francis Drake? These are two concepts. Francis Drake's strongest power is to summon the fleet. The fleet also includes manpower. Naturally, he can spend more effort to make Drake appear. But Li Nali's power is concentrated in the black boots. It doesn't have the conditions for Li Nali to appear. But, even so, I still want to have the same strength and black boots as Miss Li Nali. What, do you want to wear Li Nali's latest black boots? If you have this intention, I can introduce you to a person who has the ability to directly turn men into women. Wait a minute, what kind of terrifying ability is this? I don't want to become a woman. Sanji looked at Roki in horror and backed away. Haha, don't worry, it's just a talk. You won't really let that ladyboy king turn you into a ladyboy. But as the cook on our ship, I suggest you go and meet him. He has a method that can quickly restore the human body. I believe it will be worth learning from. Luo Qi smiled. Sanji twitched the corner of his mouth, although he didn't know who the demon king Luo Qi mentioned was or what he looked like. But just hearing the word shemale, Sanji began to retreat. Ahem, let's talk about this later. I'd better inherit Miss Li Nali's heroic spirit template first. Luffy, what are you doing? As Sanji was talking, Luffy beside him had already taken Sanji's hand and pressed it on the name of Kame Sennin. He, I'm here anyway, it would be a pity not to take a look. Luffy said with a playful smile. After the screen in the heroic spirit space rotated, what appeared in front of everyone was an old man wearing casual clothes, bald and somewhat short in stature. At this moment, he was holding a telescope and looking at the swimming pool full of beauties in swimsuits in front of him with a lewd expression. Sure enough, he looks very similar to you, Sanji. Don't you think about choosing him? Nami crossed her arms and glanced at Sanji beside her. This made Sanji could only rub the back of his head and smile apologetically, then gave Luffy a fierce look next to him. I shouldn't have clicked on this Kame Sento's name. Wouldn't this make Miss Nami's prejudice against me even deeper? Single quote. When can I get the color fruit? Single quote. That's right, Sanji at this moment has not given up on getting the color fruit from Roach. Little did he know that at this time, Luo Qi was already planning to wait until the ship spirit of the melee was formed and let it eat the color fruit. The scene in the heroic spirit space turned again, and this time Kame Sennin appeared on the martial arts field. A change from his previous frail and old appearance. Under the surprised gazes of Luffy and others, Kame Sennin easily knocked several challengers off the ring with his fists and kicks. Don't look at this old man. Although he is a bit wretched when facing beautiful women. But it is true that a truly righteous man is also a strong man. In his time, he was known as the god of martial arts. Due to long-term training, he has mastered a variety of powerful martial arts. Although most of his martial arts use both hands, if Sanji you choose him as your heroic spirit template. I guess I can get some inspiration for using my legs from it. As Luo Qi was talking, the screen turned again. I saw Kame Sennin's body suddenly erupting with a powerful aura, and the muscles on his body also swelled at this moment. In just a few seconds, Kame Sennin's originally thin figure turned into a muscular shape of more than 2 meters. Becoming a muscular man. This seems to be similar to when Luffy used Uru mimicry. Nami said while touching her chin. Hearing this, Luffy nodded in agreement. This is Kame Sennin using an energy called Chi, to strengthen himself and reach a state of jauntness. At this time, Kame Sennin's strength will be greatly increased, and of course the consumption on his body will also increase rapidly. While Luo Qi was talking, the turtle immortal suddenly bent over with his legs bent, his hands formed into the shape of a calyx and pointed at the moon in the sky. The next moment, a brilliant light was generated between Master Kame's hands, and it continued to expand and condense. Kamaha. Boom. With a loud noise, Master Kame pushed his hands toward the sky, and the energy condensed in his hands turned into an energy beam and swept straight toward the horizon. From a close distance, it looked like a spear connecting the sky and the earth. This, isn't it the same as the Purgatory Warrior's explosion heat wave cannon that you, Vice Captain Roche, used before? Usopp swallowed his saliva and looked at Roche excitedly. Indeed, Kamehameha and Purgatory Warrior's explosion heat wave cannon have similar effects. Even the inspiration for me to use the Purgatory Warrior's explosion heat wave cannon to push the boat came from Kamehameha. Rossi nodded and said. Usopp was surprised and was about to ask more about the Kame-style Qigong used by Kame Sennin. A loud noise suddenly came from the horizon. Usopp quickly looked up and looked in the direction of the sound. The next moment, his eyes widened just like Luffy, Zoro and others, with an extremely frightened expression on his face. Are you kidding? The moon. The moon is gone. Did it get blown up by the Turtle Sect's Qigong? Usopp turned his head tremblingly and looked at everyone, wanting to seek answers. You read that right, Usopp. I saw this beam of light destroy the moon with my own eyes. Sauron gritted his teeth and looked ferocious. He could not imagine that there was a power in this world that could destroy the moon. The moon can be destroyed, but what if such power falls on an island? I'm afraid the island will be overturned in an instant. It's so scary. It's even scarier than Grandpa's iron fist. Luffy rubbed his stiff face. Even with his generous personality, he was a little scared at this moment. Can such power really be possessed by humans? Luo Qi, if Sanji chooses Kame Sennin's template, will he also have such power? Nami asked. When Sanji heard this, he immediately looked over. After seeing the heroic spirit template images of Emiyashuru, Lee Nalili and Kame Sennin, he can clearly feel the attraction of Daso Lee Nalili's template to him. This is not because Lee Nali is a woman, but because he deeply feels that Lee Nali is powerful and suitable for him. However, after seeing Kame Sennin's performance, Sanji hesitated. If he could really have the power to destroy the moon, should he really choose Lee Nali as the heroic spirit template? Whether the turtle-style chi power has the power to destroy the moon still depends on the user. In fact, if you can use turtle-style qigong to destroy mountains, you are considered a good warrior. Even if today's warriors choose the Kame Sennin template, they cannot have the power to destroy the moon. In addition, even if you choose another template, it does not mean that you will not have the power to destroy the moon in the future. Usopp, take your king's template as an example. If you can master the Purgatory Unparalleled Explosive Heat Wave Cannon in the future, and it is powerful enough to a certain extent, you can also destroy the moon. Luo Qi smiled. After hearing this, Sanji couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. In this way, he no longer has to be entangled between Guixian and Lee Nali. I have decided, Luo Qi. As expected, I will choose Miss Lee Nali as my heroic spirit template. Okay, put your hand on the name, Lee Nali Lee, again with your choice, and you can have her power. Upon hearing this, Sanji raised his right hand and pressed it on Lee Nali's name without hesitation, and a burst of light wrapped around him. Sanji felt keenly that there was something more in his body. Bite. Sanji made a choice, obtained the template of Lee Nali Lee's kick technique, and understood Lee Nali Lee's initial skills. Through training and becoming stronger, he can master more heroic spirit template skills. Note: consuming devil fruit for your partner can speed up the process of understanding the heroic spirit template skills, and even the secret skills. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the legging Lee Nali Lee template and the chef Emiyashuru template, and understanding all the skills of the heroic spirit template. Note: although the host can understand all the skills of the heroic spirit template, whether the skills can be used is linked to the host's own strength. It's a pity that you can't get Kame Sennin's ability. Single quote. Forget it, Emiyashuru's unlimited swordsmanship is pretty good too. Single quote. If the inherent barrier is used well, even a strong person like Hawkeye can be trapped for a long time. Single quote. With Luoqi's thought, the heroic spirit space immediately dissipated, and everyone returned to the deck of the melee. At the same time, after Sanji felt the power in his body for a while, he began to guide this power to flow into his palms with the guidance of his heart. The next moment, a pair of women's black boots appeared in his hands. Hey, are they really Lee Nolly's black boots? Could it be that Sanji really wants the Demon King to turn him into a woman before he can use Lee Nolly's power? Nami raised her eyebrows and asked with interest. No, I don't want to become a woman. Razi, you should have something to do, right? Sanji looked desperate and looked at Luoqi for help. Perhaps, women's clothing can also be used. Luoqi smiled and continued. Okay, it's just a joke. The black boots in your hand are only their initial form. After all, they are derived from the power of Lee Nolly. You can make them change according to your physical condition if you want. Calm down, Sanji, and you should be able to feel this power. Hearing this, Sanji quickly took a deep breath and tried his best to calm down. Soon, the women's boots in his hands began to change, eventually forming a pair of men's black leather shoes. Phew, it's okay, now I don't have to turn into a woman or dress up in women's clothing. Sanji let out a long sigh of relief. Really, I think it's a pity. Nami shook her head regretfully. Just as she was about to continue to express her opinion on the power Sanji had obtained, a news bird came into her sight. News bird, what happened before? Maybe our situation has spread all over the world. Rosie also noticed the existence of the news bird. He smiled and said, raising his hand to eject a berry and the news bird from his pocket in exchange for the latest newspaper. Spread all over the world. Aren't we in danger? I don't want to experience that again. Nami quickly came to Rosie and stretched her head to look at the newspaper homepage. Rosie raised the corner of his mouth, raised his hand and slapped a bounty order sandwiched in a newspaper in front of Nami. What is this, Rosie? Bounty order, yours, brand new. What, my brand new bounty order? Hearing this, Nami looked at her own bounty order in horror. This time, the portrait of Nami on the bounty order was no longer the previous artistic painting, but a real photo of Nami fighting with the Navy. A bounty of 30 million berries. The photo has also been changed to a real one. Now those people will be able to recognize me. Aren't those Navy busy fighting us? When did they take these photos? Nami said with tears in her eyes, extremely aggrieved. But your bounty order is still only for catching alive, which is a blessing in disguise. Fortunately, you didn't use the fairy's glory before, otherwise, your bounty would not be as simple as increasing 5 million berries. Luoqi patted Nami's shoulder to comfort her. Nami pouted, and no one knew that she didn't want to use the fairy's glory before. She just worried that she would fall into a coma directly after using the fairy's glory, so she didn't use it. Hey, Rosie, Nami has a new bounty, so what about us? We should also have a new bounty, right? Luffy rushed over curiously, his eyes full of expectation. Wow, I just went out to sea and I have a bounty order. Sanji put on new black boots and looked over with the same expectation. I think it's difficult to get a bounty order based on your performance at that time. After all, you just helped, didn't you? Zoro said. Green Algae Head, what are you talking about? You are the one who helped, right? After fighting with Hawkeye, you didn't contribute to the battle with the Navy at all. Tisk, even so, I contributed more than you. On the side, Rosie saw the appearance of Zoro and Sanji, and took out all the bounties from the newspaper with a smile on his face. Blackfoot Sanji, a new member of the Straw Hat Pirates, with a bounty of 8 million berries. Rosie said as he handed Sanji's bounty order to Sanji. Haha, the Navy is still discerning. They can see that you are not a big threat, so they only gave you 8 million berries. Even if my bounty is not long, it is 12 million berries higher than yours. Zoro glanced at Sanji. At this moment, Zoro's taunting skills were directly maxed out. It's just that I got the heroic spirit template first, so I have a bounty of 20 million berries. After I master the black boots, I will definitely get a higher bounty than you. Just wait, idiot Green Algae Head. Sanji said. Hearing this, Zoro immediately put on a posture to fight with Sanji. Seeing this, Roche quickly took out Zoro's bounty order. Devil Swordsman Nanoro Zoro, bounty 35 million berries. Luffy's eyes widened. 35 million berries, so amazing. After all, he fought with Hawkeye. Although he didn't fight with the Navy much, Zoro's performance will definitely reach the ears of the Navy. Rozzy said while taking out the remaining bounties. Usopp, bounty 50 million berries, with Conqueror Haki, no matter life or death. Monkey D. Luffy, bounty 55 million berries, captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. As for me, the bounty amount has been increased from the original amount to 1 billion berries. I have worked so hard, but the Navy only gave me so little. It's really sad. Rozzy shook his head and said. Although that was the case, Rozzy understood that it was because his bounty was already high enough. And the initial bounty was due to the bonus of killing the celestial dragons. In terms of strength, his current performance may be worthy of the original 900 million berries. Now that he can be given 1 billion berries, it is already a respect for him. He, great, my bounty has increased a lot. It's a pity that your bounty has also increased, Luo-Chi. How long will it take for me to catch up with you? Luffy held the bounty order and cheered loudly. Usopp, who was standing aside, looked at the bounty order of 50 million berries in his hand and had completely stayed where he was. In addition, Francis Drake, who I summoned earlier, is also wanted by the Navy. A total bounty of 500 million berries. It seems that they are very concerned about Francis Drake's fleet. Rozzy waved the last remaining bounty order for Drake in his hand. Although the reason for the Navy's bounty on Drake was not clearly stated in the bounty order or the newspaper. But Rozzy knew the Navy and the world government. Seeing Francis Drake's powerful fleet, how could they not be curious about those weapons that can release lasers? The 500 million bounty was probably issued in the name of wanting to capture her and seize the secret of the laser weapons on her fleet. Rozzy even felt that the increase of his bounty by 100 million was also due to the fact that he called Francis Drake. 500 million berries, worthy of Miss Drake, she is really amazing. As a person conquered by Francis Drake, Sanji was the first to express his admiration. Zoro nodded slightly. If that woman is still alive, she may have more than 500 million berries. The Navy may never catch Drake in their lifetime. Luffy, let's tell Drake this good news when we have a banquet later. Nami, seeing the bounty of Big Sister Drake, I suddenly feel that my bounty is nothing. Usopp, don't you think so? Nami said, looking at Usopp with a smile on her face. But at this time, Usopp was still completely immersed in his 50 million bounty. 50 million berries, regardless of life or death. Now, am I not in danger? Usopp exclaimed, without any trace of the majestic look when facing the Navy. I understand you, Usopp. For people like us, bounties are completely unnecessary. Nami was shocked by Usopp's reaction, but as a kind of person, she quickly reacted. Good thing raised her hand and patted Usopp on the shoulder, comforting him with some sympathy. She was fine, at least the bounty said, only catch alive, but Usopp was completely different. Nami, don't worry about Usopp's affairs for now, just care about your affairs first. Rozzy walked in front of Nami, his face gradually became serious. This time, your bounty uses your real photo. In other words, the dragon pirates entrenched in your hometown may also get your bounty. To be safe, we must go to your hometown quickly to prevent him from doing something bad. Although Arlong and others of the dragon pirates are arrogant and always look down on humans. But Rozzy didn't think they would be stupid. Seeing Nami's current bounty order, Rozzy didn't think they wouldn't arrange some defensive measures. In fact, if they were smart enough, Rozzy thought they might just choose to run away. Yes, everyone in Kokoja village. Nami's eyes shook, and she quickly looked at Luffy and others. Everyone, I need to get back to Kokoja village as soon as possible. Please cooperate with me so that I can get back to the village as quickly as possible. Okay, let's go to Nami's hometown now and beat those hateful fishmen away. Luffy clenched his fists and loudly announced the captain's order. Zoro and Usopp nodded and planned to control the ship. But Rozzy stopped them. It's not too far from Kokoja village now, but for the sake of safety, I'd better go there first. It's just right. I've rested enough and eaten a lot of food. I should have enough physical strength to fly over now. After Roche stuffed the last few rice balls cooked by Sanji into his mouth, he changed into the same black boots as Sanji in front of everyone. Wait, are you going to fly over directly using the black boots? Nami ran over in surprise. Of course, if I use the black boots, the speed can still be guaranteed. Nami, do you want to go there with me first? Roche raised his head and saw the expectation in Nami's eyes clearly. Of course, Roche, take me with you. As she said that, Nami hugged Rock's hand in Sanji's envious look. Wait, if you want to fly over, I will. Sanji, you haven't used the black boots yet, so your flying speed can't keep up with me. And your physical strength can't support flying for too long. Rocky said, and turned to look at Luffy. Luffy, I'll go with Nami first, and you guys will follow, okay? Luffy nodded slightly. Well, although I want to beat up that fool Arlong myself. But since Nami's family may be in danger, there is no other way. Rocky, if you meet that Arlong, help me punch him hard. Hearing this, Rocky nodded. If possible, I would like to. But I think Nami would prefer to do it herself. Now she has the strength to deal with the dragon pirates. Although Nami didn't speak, her attitude could be seen from her clenched fists. Let's go, Nami. Luo Qi released his black boots, and his calves were immediately wrapped with emerald green flames. The body slowly floated up. Come here. Nami trotted up to Rossi and took the suitcase where Rossi stored the devil fruit. Then he jumped directly to Luo Qi's hands. Let's go, Raza. Nami said. Luo Qi nodded slightly and said hello to Luffy, Zoro and others. His body jumped upwards, and his speed exceeded the speed of sound in an instant. When Luffy and others looked again, Rossi and Nami had disappeared into the clouds. It's really fast. I wish I had black boots like this. Then I don't have to worry about being caught. Usopp shook his head, and then suddenly realized that Sanji had black boots. He was suddenly shocked and turned to look at Sanji. Hey, Sanji, can you lend me your black boots? I also want to experience the feeling of flying. Luffy nodded heavily. Yes, me too. Sanji sighed and said, you should understand that my pair of black boots can only be used by me, but it is Luo Qi's pair of black boots that you can try to borrow. Okay, don't bother me. I will study my black boots carefully now. After the study is successful, I will also fly with the beautiful woman like Luo Qi. After saying that, Sanji planned to leave. Hey, Cook, we have to go to Nami's hometown now, don't even think about being lazy. Zoro held Sanji's shoulders and said with a serious face. Okay, I get it. Sanji sighed and could only temporarily put down his plan to use the black boots, and together with Usopp and Zoro, controlled the melee and continued to sail towards Kokoja village. On the other side, a certain sea area in the New World. On an uninhabited island, the leaders of the red-haired pirates were happily gathering together for a banquet. Beckman, what are you looking at? Keep coming and drinking. The red-haired Shanks was carried to Ben Beckman's side and shouted to pass the wine glass in his hand to Beckman's hand. Shanks, wait and drink. I have important news here. Important news? Could it be that Kaido guy is coming to trouble us again? No. Is that the Navy coming? No. Beckman waved the newspaper and reward order in his hand, and then said, CJEF. It's about Luffy and Jesus Boo's son. As soon as the words fell, the originally lively banquet suddenly became quiet. Jesus Bu, who was a little drunk at first, immediately woke up and came to Beckman's side in one stride. Beckman, what happened to my son? Why is he in the newspaper? For his son, Jesus has always been apologetic. How could he not feel worried when he heard Beckman suddenly mention the news about his son? Don't worry, it's not a bad thing. Your son Usopp joined the pirate group formed by Luffy, and now he has become somewhat famous on the sea. Speaking of which, your son sounds good. He has awakened his domineering energy at such a young age. According to what is written in this news, your son's overlord appearance is not even low. Beckman smiled and handed the bounty orders of Luffy and Usopp to Shanks and Jesus respectively. What? My son has awakened his overlord color. Are you kidding? Wait, 50 million berries. Why is there so much reward? This is a reward that can be obtained just after going to sea. Jesus Bu, what happened to my son? Jesus took a look at the reward notice and immediately recognized that the person in the photo was Usopp. But because of this, more doubts came to his mind. Luffy has actually been offered a bounty of 55 million berries. Beckman, is there any detailed information about what they have done in the newspaper? After Shanks handed Luffy's bounty order to the others, he curiously asked Beckman. Of course. At the sea restaurant Barati in the East China Sea, the pirate group led by Luffy clashed with the fleet led by Crane and Momotu Gion and finally escaped. During this period, both Luffy, Usopp and other members of the pirate ship showed great strength. So they all have high bounties on their heads. Actually, the news I got here is relatively slow. Long before Luffy was offered a bounty of 55 million berries, he had already been offered a bounty of 30 million berries. This is the second time a bounty has been placed on the 55 million yuan. Beckman said. Shanks and others didn't mind this either. After all, they are now on an isolated island in the New World, and there may not necessarily be newsbirds coming here to deliver newspapers. It's normal to miss it once or twice. However, Luffy and the others were able to fight Crane and Gion, and also escape. Beckman, you probably have something you haven't said yet. Shanks laughed. Even though he was very optimistic about Luffy, Shanks didn't think Luffy could fight with the Navy's chief staff officer and Navy Admiral candidate. You're right, Shanks. The reason why Luffy and Usopp were able to escape unscathed. I think it has something to do with this man. Beckman placed a bounty in front of everyone and continued. Shanks, he is not the one with the highest bounty in the pirate group formed by Luffy. It's this guy named Rossi, and his bounty is 1 billion berries. When Beckman's voice fell, the red hair pirates couldn't help but exclaimed. What, 1 billion berries? There are pirates with 1 billion berries in the East China Sea. Stupid, is this the problem? Shouldn't the problem be that his bounty is higher than that of Luffy, the captain? Yes, what did this guy do to have a higher bounty than Luffy? Shanks took the newspaper handed over by Beckman, quickly browsed the description of the Straw Hat Pirates, and then a smile appeared on his face again. I remember that this man is the pirate with a bounty of 900 million berries in the North Sea not long ago. I didn't expect him to go to the East Sea and join the pirate group formed by Luffy. Shanks laughed. Beckman took a puff of cigarette, nodded, and said. That's right, Shanks, the high bounty of Luffy and others may be affected by this Rosie. But this must also be related to Luffy and others' strength. Logically speaking, neither Luffy, who has just set sail, nor Usopp should have the current strength. Plus the news described Rosie and Zoro performing similar swordsmanship. I boldly infer that this man may have played a teacher-like role in the Straw Hat Pirates. When the people of Red Hair Shanks heard this, they nodded secretly. That's right, a pirate group that has just been at sea for less than a month can have such strength. If it's not a gifted person, then there is a strong person to teach. And Rosie, who has a bounty of 1 billion berries, just fits this character. It just so happens that I think so too. Shanks laughed and nodded, saying. But this matter is related to Luffy and Jesus Boo's son after all. To be safe, we still need to confirm Rosie's character. Hearing this, Beckman raised his eyebrows. Do you want to meet Rosie? Shanks shook his head and said. No, it's not the time to meet Luffy now. Haven't Hawkeye fought with Rosie? It just so happens that I haven't seen that guy for a long time. I'll go and have a drink with him. If Hawkeye thinks Rosie is wrong, let's go talk to that Rosie alone, haha. As he said that, Shanks turned around and shouted loudly for people to prepare for the voyage. Beckman shook his head. He had expected this result, but he didn't persuade him. Instead, he walked to Jesus Bu and put his hand on his shoulder. I didn't expect that Usopp would have the domineering aura that you don't even have. Perhaps, his future achievements will surpass yours. Beckman smiled. If that's true, I'll be very proud. Jesus raised his lips, looking at the extremely majestic photo of Usopp on the bounty order, and his heart was full of relief. Kokoja Village, Dragon Park, Colonel Mouse, I think you should want to see this. A Navy soldier came to Colonel Mouse with a stack of newspapers with a nervous look. Huh, didn't you see that I was talking business with Captain Arlong? No, I know, I just think that this news is very important to you. Really, I hope it's as you said. If it's not so important, then you should think about how to apologize to me later. Colonel Mouse snorted coldly, took the newspaper, apologized to Arlong, and started reading. As time passed, Colonel Mouse's expression changed from rebellious to puzzled, and then from puzzled to horrified. Colonel Mouse, you look a little unhappy. What happened to Luo Qi? At this time, Aaron suddenly asked curiously. Aaron, do you know this woman? Colonel Mouse exhaled, and pushed a bounty order in the newspaper in front of Aaron. His face looked extremely serious. Hey, Colonel Mouse, are you still worried about the problem last time? Didn't we discuss the last thing? The Nami who was bountied can't be my Nami. Aaron waved his hand, his words full of arrogance. Although he said so, Aaron's eyes still fell on the bounty order handed over by Colonel Mouse. Huh, this photo, how is it possible? Aaron jumped up from his seat in an instant, picked up Nami's bounty order and looked at it carefully. Aaron, what's wrong? Is there any problem? The cadres of the surrounding dragon pirates noticed Aaron's actions and walked over in confusion. This was the first time they saw Aaron with such a surprised expression since they came to the East China Sea. However, after seeing the reward order in Aaron's hand, everyone fell into self-doubt like Aaron. Colonel Mouse, what's going on with the photo on the reward order, and what's going on with the 30 million berry reward? After a while, Aaron came back to his senses and looked at Colonel Mouse with a gloomy expression. Looking at your expression, it should be right. Aaron, this woman is the Nami of your dragon pirates, right? Read today's newspaper. After reading it, you should know what kind of group of people your people are heading here with. As a partner for many years, I advise you to make plans early. As for your plan to let me seize Nami's treasure, I have to back out. Colonel Mouse handed the newspaper to Aaron, stood up and planned to leave. Just kidding, now that he knows that Nami in the bounty order and Nami, the navigator of the dragon pirates, are the same person, Colonel Mouse can't wait to grow a pair of wings immediately and hurry up to the island under his feet. Think about Nami and the Straw Hat Pirates behind Nami, and think about Rossi who has a bounty of 1 billion berries. Colonel Mouse felt a twinge of fear. He didn't think that the Straw Hat Pirates, who dared to fight with Commander Suru and the candidate Guion General, would be scared when they saw a naval colonel like him. Gotta leave quickly. Single quote. If I let that Nami guide the relationship between me and Aaron. Single quote. I'm in trouble. Single quote. While Colonel Mouse was thinking in his mind, he walked faster and faster towards the gate of Dragon Park. He didn't see that Aaron behind him had raised his right hand towards him with a ferocious look on his face. Hit the water. Bang! Aaron swung the water droplets in his palm at Colonel Mouse, making a sound like a bullet coming out of the barrel. Colonel Mouse only felt a sharp pain in his abdomen, followed by a powerful impact that caused his body to fly forward involuntarily. When he reacted, he found that he was lying on the ground with a large amount of blood flowing out of his abdomen. At this moment, two figures rode the breeze and fell from the sky, landing quietly on the roof of the Dragon Park. The two of them were Razi and Nami, who were using the black boots to rush on their way. Navy. Why is there a navy here? Are they here to arrest the dragon pirates? Nami stood on the roof, looking at the scene below with a puzzled expression. The magic cards that were about to be waved were also taken back because of Aaron's attack on the navy. I think it's more like they're having trouble. Nami, let's sit down and take a look at the situation. It won't be a big deal if you do it a little bit at night. Rossi closed the black boots, patted the place beside him and said to Nami. Nami nodded slightly, suppressing the desire to take action immediately, and sat next to Luo Qi. However, even Luo Qi was frightened when she looked at Aaron with eyes filled with hatred. You, what are you doing? Why attack Colonel Rat? Be on guard, be on guard. 203, the Navy soldiers following Captain Mouse raised their gun barrels and pointed at Aaron in horror, fearing that he would take action again. The soldiers' words also made Colonel Mouse understand his situation. He looked at Aaron with a gloomy face in fear, his face full of doubts. Aaron, what are you doing? Aren't we partners? Why are you attacking me? Colonel Mouse asked. Partner, if it is really a partner, why are you rushing to leave now? If it is a partner, shouldn't you stay and discuss countermeasures with me? Aaron tore the newspaper into pieces with both hands, and walked to Colonel Mouse with an extremely gloomy expression. The soldiers who wanted to shoot Aaron were instantly knocked to the ground by other pirate cadres and could no longer get up. I know, I won't quit. Aaron, believe me, I will take away Nami's treasure right now so that she will not be able to save 100 million belly. Chapter 71. By the way, I can also find a way to let my people control her family, so that even if she comes back, she can't do anything to us. Seeing Arlong's murderous expression, Colonel Mouse was horrified and his brain was working fast, trying to find a way to make Arlong show mercy. At this moment, Colonel Mouse wanted to slap himself twice. If he hadn't come to Dragon Park so early this time, he wouldn't have encountered such a thing. Hee, since there is a guy with a bounty of 1 billion berries behind that woman, what if we catch her family? Do you expect that you can continue to control this island and Nami in this way? Colonel Mouse, I'm not stupid. Since you can think of escaping, why can't I think of leaving? I'm sorry, your warship belongs to me, as for you all, stay here. At this moment, Arlong's arrogance was completely destroyed, so he chose to leave directly. Having been in the New World, he understood the significance of the Navy Vice Admiral, and the Straw Hat Pirates were able to fight the Navy led by Crane and Guion and escape without injury. This meant that the Dragon Pirates were no match for the Straw Hat Pirates. However, we have to repay Nami before we leave. How dare you join such a dangerous group of people? Everyone, do me a favor and kill Nami's sister. No, kill everyone in Kokoja village. When Nami comes back, she will definitely thank me, ha ha ha. Arlong laughed wildly, unaware that Nami on the roof of the Dragon Park had already emitted substantial black air. All the members of the Dragon Pirates followed Arlong's orders and rushed to the door with their weapons, intending to slaughter the Kokoja village. However, before everyone arrived at the door, a figure fell from the sky with heavy force. It actually shattered the gate of the Dragon Park and the stone slabs at the gate. Who is it? Arlong's laughter stopped abruptly, and he immediately looked over angrily in a bad mood. Haha, I'm the pirate you're talking about with a bounty of 1 billion berries. Roki raised his lips and walked out of the smoke with a smile on his face. A little fishman, you actually want to slaughter my partner's family and neighbors. Then don't blame me for attacking you. Roki waved his hands, and the projection magic unfolded. 2 short knives, one black and one white, instantly appeared in his hands. As soon as his figure flashed, the fishmen near the gate of the Dragon Park were beheaded and fell to the ground with a look of horror. It's you, Roki. Arlong and Colonel Mouse widened their eyes and wanted to retreat in fear. They didn't see Roki's attack just now, which means that if Roki attacked them, they would not be able to react either. How could this not scare Colonel Mouse and others? At this moment, the fear that only existed in the New World was completely awakened by Arlong. He took a step back with a horrified look. Wait, since you are here, then Nami. Arlong, you idiot. Before Arlong finished speaking, Nami's voice suddenly rang out in the Dragon Park. Arlong looked in the direction of the voice, and what caught his eyes was a series of wind blades. He instinctively raised his arms and tried his best to defend. But even so, he was still blown away by the wind blades. His hard skin was scratched, his muscles were torn, and the extreme pain made Arlong's face even more hideous. It's Nami, she's really back. What was that just now? Why did the card she threw summon the wind blade? Since Captain Arlong was injured, when did Nami have such power? The members of the Dragon Pirates looked at Nami with eyes looking at a stranger. Even now, even if they saw Nami launching an attack, they had no way to connect Nami, who was now offering a bounty of 30 million berries, with Nami, who had been suppressed by them. The cadres looked gloomy and wanted to help Eren. But looking at Luochi, who was holding a knife on his shoulder, they did not dare to move at all. Well, you don't have to worry about me taking action. As long as you don't make a plan to leave through the door behind me, you can move freely. In other words, you can go and deal with Nami with confidence. Luochi raised the corner of his mouth and said to the cadres with a gentle look. Hearing this, the cadres looked at each other, but still couldn't believe it. At this moment, a huge fireball flew from Nami's direction. It directly knocked the cadres who were not on guard away and landed next to Eren. The next moment, the fireball exploded. For a while, a faint smell of grilled fish floated in the Dragon Park. Nami took back the card that summoned the fireball, and looked at Eren and others who stood up with their teeth clenched and their wounds covered with a gloomy face. Years of resentment and the conversation between Eren and others just now made Nami have only one thought in her mind at this moment. Eren, and you, let's put an end to everything between us today. Eren's hateful eyes flashed, and when he noticed Luochi standing at the gate of Dragon Park, he was destined not to act rashly. He took a deep breath, calmed his expression as much as possible, and looked at Nami with a self-proclaimed gentle smile. Hey, Nami, why are you so angry? Aren't we partners? Partner. Haha, Eren, it seems that there is a big difference between you and me in the definition of partners. Don't say that, don't we still have an agreement? Agreement? Eren, how dare you mention an agreement to me? I heard the conversation between you and the Navy over there before. You still want to kill everyone in Kokoja village before leaving, don't you? Nami was angry, and a light blue light emanated from her body. In the blink of an eye, her hair changed from orange to black, and her original short hair became waist-length hair. There was even a seal of the fairy tale union on her abdomen. At this moment, Nami had already entered Kana's heroic spirit mimicry because of anger. Seeing this scene, Eren felt a chill in his heart for no reason. Although he didn't understand what was going on with Nami's figure, thinking of what Nami had just said, he understood that this might be a sign of Nami's action. All people, run! Along shouted to his companions in the Dragon Pirates, and turned around and jumped into the swimming pool behind him. He planned to escape by water. Seeing this, the other members of the Dragon Pirates jumped into the swimming pool one after another. The speed of fishmen in the sea is several times that of humans. As long as we use seawater, even that Luochi will not be able to catch up with us. Single quote. With a splash, Arlong successfully jumped into the swimming pool first. He looked at the cadres and other fishmen pirates who jumped into the swimming pool after him, and couldn't help but feel relieved. No, why didn't Nami stop them? Shouldn't everyone be able to escape? Single quote. Suddenly, a very strong sense of uneasiness flashed through Arlong's heart. It forced him to turn around and flee far away. However, at this moment, a huge brilliance in the sky caught his attention. Along with the strong golden light that appeared in the sky, there followed a shocking and extremely strong sense of oppression. Some weaker fishman pirates even froze in place, staring blankly through the sea at the light in the sky turning into a huge golden collar. Oh no, everyone run away. Thinking of the scene where Nami summoned wind blades and fireballs from the cards just now, Eren immediately felt a strong sense of uneasiness in his heart. The attacks of wind blades and fireballs were already able to hurt them, so how could such a strong golden light be weak? The golden light in the air made Eren think of Kizaru, whom he had faced before, for no reason. However, before Eren and other fishman pirates could take action, a cold voice came into their ears. Eren, you will end it in this sea. The glory of the fairy, start. Buzz. The huge golden collar in the sky suddenly fell, making a deafening roar. At the moment it fell into the swimming pool, the golden collar suddenly exploded. The punishment power in the golden light turned into a huge impact force, blowing everyone in the swimming pool, including Eren, out of the sea, and then they were wrapped in the golden halo and finally melted into the golden halo. Did they lose? The blue light on Nami's body dissipated, and she recovered from Kana's heroic spirit mimicry. Well, they couldn't die anymore, not even a hair could be left. Beside Nami, Rosie, who had expected it, had already entered Kana's heroic spirit mimicry. He put his right hand on Nami's shoulder and smiled gently at her. The magic power of the same origin was continuously input into Nami's body, preventing Nami from fainting on the spot because of using the fairy's glory. Nami only felt a gentle energy nourishing her spirit, making her originally drowsy head a little more sober. Really, that's great. After saying this, Nami's legs softened, and her body leaned forward and fell to the ground. Rosie, who was well prepared, immediately reached out and helped Nami up. Really, it's possible to deal with the dragon pirates even without using the fairy's glory. If it weren't for me, you would have fainted by now. Rosie shook his head and carried Nami on his back. Nami chuckled, with a reassuring smile on her face, and let Rosie carry her forward. It is because I know you are here that I can use the fairy's glory with peace of mind. However, I didn't expect you to be like this when you entered Kana's heroic spirit mimicry. By the way, you haven't become a woman now, have you? Nami asked with interest. Since you are so interested, do you want me to take off all my clothes and show you? 1,000,000 berries will do. What, you are charging me? Nami, if you can charge me, why can't I? You are obviously curious about my condition this time. No money, but I can show you my body as a reward, hee. Your joke is funny, but I will take it seriously, Nami. If you take it seriously, then take it seriously. Anyway, you have the ability to be invisible. Maybe you have peeped at me at some time that I don't know. You think I am Sanji. Roche smiled and shook his head, suddenly stopping near the entrance of Dragon Park. By the way, I almost forgot about you guys. Roche lowered his head and looked at the Rat Colonel and other Navy officers who fell to the ground with their heads in their hands, pretending to be dead. Hearing the sound above his head, Colonel Mouse trembled and immediately wanted to beg Luochi for mercy. But what greeted him was a huge fireball. Razi, does it really not matter if you kill these Marines? Nami asked worriedly as she looked at Captain Mouse and other Marines who were instantly engulfed by the fireball summoned by Rossi's card magic. Nami, if you are worried that the death of these Marines will lead to further retaliation and pursuit from the Navy or the world government, there is no need to do so. This old rat colonel doesn't have a background like Guion. If a rat colonel dies, the Navy may not even increase my bounty by 1 berry. He doesn't know Luffy's grandfather very well either, so it won't make things difficult for Luffy and his grandfather. Then again, this rat colonel has probably been cooperating with the dragon pirates for a long time. Your hometown will suffer from being ruled by pirates for many years, and Colonel Mouse is indispensable. For such a person, even if he has a huge background in the Navy, I don't intend to let him go. After all, Nami, you are my partner now. Rossi turned around and glanced at Nami with a smile. Razi. Nami pursed her lips, leaving a tear of emotion in the corner of her eyes. I'm sorry, Luochi, you are obviously sincerely helping me. But I doubted you at the beginning and was unwilling to accept the power of the heroic spirit template. I'm really sorry and, thank you for saving me from years of nightmares. Nami expressed her apology, gradually used her hands to press her face against Rosie's back. Luochi listened quietly to Nami telling her past, and walked forward along the road with Nami on his back. Gradually, the figures of some villagers running quickly towards the Dragon Park came into Luochi's eyes. That woman is Nami's sister, maybe. Single quote. Luochi turned his eyes and quickly noticed the figure with blue hair among the crowd in the distance. Look, that person is Luochi, the man with a reward of 1 billion berries. Did he cause the explosion that just happened in Dragon Park? Wait a minute, look at his back. Isn't that Nami? The villagers of Kokoja village noticed Nami and ran over at a faster speed. Among them, Nami's sister Nokigao and the village policeman Aegean, who is like Nami's adoptive father, ran at the front. Nijigao, Aegean, everyone, why are you here? Nami hung her hands around Luochi's neck, stretched out her head and looked at Nokigao and the others curiously. We saw a huge light pillar suddenly rising in Dragon Park and thought something might have happened here, so we rushed over to take a look. Nami, you are coming from the Dragon Park, right? Is there already? Having said this, Nokigao couldn't help but stop and looked at Nami's face expectantly. Well, it's been destroyed down there. Both the Dragon Park and the Dragon Pirates have disappeared. Nami nodded slightly and smiled. Really, is it Mr. Roach? Nokigao looked at Luochi in surprise and asked. I just helped a little. It was Nami who eliminated Eren and the others. If you have any doubts, you can go to Dragon Park and have a look. Razi smiled and shook his head. After hearing this, several villagers immediately ran to the Dragon Park excitedly, wanting to confirm what Luochi said. Nuochigao's eyes lit up and his expression became more and more excited. So, everything in the newspaper is true. Nami, have you really become a navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates, and a powerful pirate with a bounty of 30 million berries? Nokigao asked. Well, it's a long story. I'll talk to Nokigao in detail later. Nami smiled and nodded. It seems that I can hear a very good story this time. Speaking of which, Nami, since you have joined the Straw Hat Pirates, what about the others, Luffy and Zoro, aren't they here? Luffy and Zoro will come later. Rossi was worried that the Dragon Pirates would be detrimental to everyone after seeing my bounty order, so Rossi took me and rushed back as quickly as possible. Quote. So that's it. It's really reliable, Mr. Luochi. Could it be that the two of you are actually boyfriend and girlfriend? Nijigao, what are you talking about? Isn't it? If not, why is Nami blushing? Really, I won't talk to you anymore, Nuochigao. Nami pouted and retracted her head behind Razi. Nuo Chigao turned her head to look at Luochi, the corners of her mouth raised slightly. Mr. Razi, can you satisfy my curiosity? Haha, Nami is a very lovely lady. She is good at everything except always thinking about my treasure. It would be a very happy thing to have a girlfriend like Nami. After Luochi finished speaking, Nami felt her face getting very hot. Fortunately, Luochi did not continue talking about this topic. Ms. Nokigao, can you take Nami home to rest first? She just used an ability beyond her physical strength. It's best for her to have a good sleep now. I have some other things to deal with. Roche patted Nami's back and pushed her in front of Nokigo. Nokigo didn't say much, and followed Rock's action to put Nami on his back. Well, see you later. Roche greeted Nami, stared at the ground with his feet slightly, and flew towards the coast in front of everyone using the moon step. Nami, do you know what he is going to do? Nokigo looked at Roche flying in the sky in amazement, and asked Nami in confusion. Maybe, he is going to deal with some navy. Nami thought of Colonel Mouse and others who were dealt with by Roche, and muttered. On the coast, a navy warship was sailing quickly away from the village of Kokoja. On the deck, a navy officer wearing a cloak of justice and with the rank of major was holding a Den Den Mushi, trembling and waiting for the Den Den Mushi to be transferred. After a few seconds, the face of the Den Den Mushi in his hand changed rapidly, turning into a very majestic face. At the same time, a steady voice came from the Den Den Mushi. I'm Sengoku, your Major Smith from the 16th branch of the East China Sea Navy, right? You told the communications officer of the Navy headquarters that you found someone who looked like Nami. Is that true? Reporting to Marshal Sengoku, although I didn't see Nami herself, I saw the attack method that looked like Nami. The golden light column and golden halo that penetrated the sky must be that woman. Huh, did the Straw Hat Pirates go to your 16th branch? No, we are now on a mission on Kokoja Island in the East China Sea. Now I have no way to contact Colonel Mouse. I suspect he may have been killed by the Straw Hat Pirates. Smith said with cold sweat on his forehead. He was extremely glad that he didn't follow Colonel Mouse to the Dragon Park this time. He knew that the place covered by the light column just now was the Dragon Park. Thinking of the destination of his boss Colonel Mouse and Nami he had mentioned before, Smith immediately guessed that Nami might have returned to the Dragon Park and retaliated against the Dragon Pirates. The inability to contact Colonel Mouse means that he is likely to be among those who were retaliated against. Thinking of this, Smith was sweating as he looked at the new bounty order for Nami that he had received from the newsbird not long ago. At this time, he wished he could find the man who drew the bounty order picture for Nami in the first chapter and throw him into the cell. Kokoja Island. I understand. Smith, you continue to keep an eye on the traces of the Straw Hat Pirates there, do you understand? Ah, but Marshal Sengoku, we don't have the power to fight the Straw Hat Pirates. As a lieutenant commander in the Navy, are you afraid of death? No, you misunderstood Marshal Sengoku. Smith, I'm not asking you to face the Straw Hat Pirates directly, but to monitor them in a secret way, do you understand? Understand. Understood. Smith twitched his mouth. He never thought that his phone call would lead to such a result. Not only did he fail to seek rescue, but he also exposed himself to a more dangerous situation. At this moment, a series of terrified shouts sounded behind Smith. You guys, be quiet. Before he finished speaking, Smith felt a pain in his chest and interrupted him instantly. How could it be? Smith looked down and found that his heart had been pierced by a sharp blade. The next moment, his consciousness fell into endless darkness. Hey, Smith, what happened to you? The Den Den Mushi that fell to the ground was still performing its work, and a series of slightly anxious inquiries came from the Den Den Mushi. It turned out to be Sengoku. It's better not to contact this guy first. Single quote. Roki thought in his heart while pulling out the sharp blade that crushed Smith's heart, ignoring the Den Den Mushi that was still making a sound and looking at the remaining other navy. Colonel Mouse and the Dragon Pirates have bullied my good navigator for many years. Single quote. And as a navy, no one of you stood up, and no one reported Colonel Mouse to the higher-ups. Single quote. So, none of you are innocent. Single quote. In that case, I should kill you. Single quote. While thinking, Luochi raised the famous sword Kinpira in his hand. The Marines looked at Luoqi in horror. Some of them shot at Luoqi like crazy, and some collapsed directly on the ground. The next moment, countless crescents flew towards all the Marines with Luoqi as the center. For a moment, screams spread far into the sea, and the den mushi that fell on the deck fell into silence. After a while, when Luoqi was about to leave with the Navy's treasure, a voice that Luoqi was very familiar with rang out from the other side of the den mushi. Luoqi, you are on the other side. I am Stussy, you should not have forgotten me. Stussy's voice was full of charm, but it was also a little complicated and resentful. Stussy. Luoqi stopped and frowned at the den mushi. Why is this woman in Sengoku? Single quote. Luoqi originally wanted to find out the reason why Stussy appeared in warring states. But thinking about his experience with Stussy, he gave up such an idea. For dealing with such a shrewd woman, you will be tricked if you are not careful. He had just joined CP0, but he had been tricked by Stussy a lot. Although when it came time to leave CP0, he himself gave Stussy a hard time. Her identity as the Queen of Happy Street was directly exposed. Although Rosie did not see the consequences of Stussy's identity being exposed, she thought that she could no longer be a good sister to the Yonko Charlotte Lingling. Thinking of this, Luoqi jumped directly and swung a huge flying slash from the air. Directly cut the naval warship into several pieces. The naval warship lost its buoyancy and quickly fell into the water, and the phone bug was forced to hang up the phone after touching the sea water for a moment. Done, done. It's time to get some rest. Luoqi rubbed his slightly stiff shoulders, looked in the direction of Kokoja village and rushed out with a single stride. At the same time, on the other side, Naval Headquarters, Marshal's office. Rosie. Stussy threw the phone's microphone on Sangwo's desk. The originally elegant expression looked extremely ferocious at this moment. Hey, this is my office. Are you going too far? Warring States tapped the table with his fingers and frowned as he looked ahead at the CP0 agent who suddenly came to his office. Sangwo also understood the energy of the woman in front of him. Therefore, she didn't express much opinion on how angry she was with Luoqi. Stussy took a long breath and calmed down quickly. Marshal Warring States, let's continue the conversation just now. The world government is interested in Francis Drake's fleet appearing in the East China Sea. They hope you can capture her as soon as possible, or get more information from Rosie about Francis Drake's fleet. In addition, Lord Tianlong has lost patience with your Navy's repeated attempts to let Luoqi go. They want you to catch Raza as soon as possible, ASAP. Hearing this, Sengoku frowned slightly. I have arranged enough manpower. The reason why Crane and Guion failed is because Luoqi grew too fast. And UCP0 gave us wrong information. Marshal of the War CJEF country, are you blaming our CP0 agency? Please don't make excuses for your incompetence in the Navy. Garp is now in Rogue Town. Next, Rossi should enter the Grand Line from Rogue Town with the Straw Hat Pirates. At that time, Garp will catch them. Navy hero Garp, is there still Rogue Town? It's a good opportunity. If we can catch Rossi before he enters the Grand Line, we can complete the mission of the Tianlong people. Stussy nodded slightly and murmured. She understood that taking action against Rossi in Rogue Town was already the most convenient opportunity. If he waits until Luoqi is included in the Grand Route, then the sky is high and the birds can fly. If he wants to catch him in that chaotic sea, the difficulty will increase exponentially. As for letting the naval hero Garp capture Roach, Stussy felt more at ease. After all, the name Iron Fist Garp is not just called casually. Not enough. However, at this moment, an extremely cold voice suddenly came from the direction of the gate. Go away, do you want to be executed? Let me in. Warring States and Stussy followed the sound and saw an old man with a beard, sunglasses and gorgeous clothes walking in from the gate. However, the most eye-catching thing is the transparent glass cover on the old man's head. Lord St. Roswald, why are you here? Stussy's eyes widened and she trotted over quickly. If I don't come, I don't know when you will talk about it. Warring States period, right. I want you to send more troops to capture Luoqi. He killed my son, I will cut him into pieces. Saint Roswader glanced at Stussy, then turned to look at Sengoku with a serious expression. Holy Roswader, Garp, as a veteran strongman, is enough to deal with Razi. Sengoku said with a frown. HMPH, isn't that Crane an old man from your navy? Hasn't he been played by Luochi for so long? Let me tell you, just asking Garp to arrest Razi is not enough. I want you to activate the demon-slaying order. If Razi appears in that rogue town, you will use the demon-slaying order to bombard that island for me. Holy Roswad clenched his teeth. Whenever he thought of his son's body with dismembered body, a burst of anger surged in his heart again. Hearing this, Sangwo frowned even more. The demon-slaying order is a means of launching an indiscriminate attack on a certain area. Warring States knew very well that if the demon-slaying order was really launched in Rogue Town, Garp, who was guarding Rogue Town alone, would not agree to anything else. If the demon-slaying order was really launched, Garp would even deliberately let the Straw Hat Pirates leave. The demon-slaying order cannot be activated, but I can send another powerful navy with a naval warship to help Garp. After thinking for a moment, Sengoku spoke to Saint Roswader. After all, the son of Saint Roswader was killed by Luochi. Although more responsibility lies with the soldiers guarding the celestial dragons, their navy also has the obligation to track down Luochi. And it is indeed unreasonable that Luochi has not been caught until now. The Warring States period could already imagine how the Five Old Stars would criticize him as a naval marshal if Luochi returned to safety and returned to the Grand Line. Only a naval warship. Unless you send a naval admiral or you Sengoku go there in person, I will never agree. Saint Roswader looked at Sengoku fiercely and said. Warring States twitched the corner of his mouth and looked at the messy Saint Roswader in front of him somewhat speechlessly. A Garp, plus a general or a marshal, if this kind of combat power is only used to capture a rookie pirate group, it will really make people laugh. Even though there is a criminal among this rookie pirate group who has a bounty of 1 billion berries on his head. I have no way to get over. The 3 admirals of the Navy also have their own jobs now. They will have no way to rush to Rogue Town in a short time. If Saint Roswader doesn't mind, I can send a powerful lieutenant general from the Navy headquarters to cooperate with Garp. Sengoku said, looking at Kaji, a candidate for admiral and known as the T-Dolphin, who had been sitting in the office for a long time. Haha, are you going to arrest Luochi? I'm quite happy to do so. T-Dolphin rubbed his chin, a sharp light flashed in his eyes. You, Saint Roswald glanced suspiciously at Jaji, who didn't look majestic at all. Holy Roswader, this one is our candidate for the Admiral of the Navy headquarters. In terms of strength, he is already at the forefront of the Vice Admirals of the Navy headquarters. With Cap, there's no reason why Razi wouldn't get caught. Warring States laughed. Candidate for Admiral. Your Guion is also a candidate for Admiral. Didn't he catch Luochi? Could it be possible to catch Luochi by replacing him with a general candidate? Speaking of which, I heard that Guion was captured by that Razi for a while. She couldn't catch Luochi. Could it be that something happened to Luochi during the period when she was captured? Saint Roswader said. The speaker has no intention, the listener has intention. Jaji's original smiling face turned gloomy at this moment. However, Roswad Saint had no idea of adding physical strength to emotion, so he turned to look at Stussy. You seem to know something about that man. You also think he is the kind of man who likes women. Otherwise, why would he be willing to capture Guion and then let her go? Indeed, when that man came to Happy Street, which I said he was in charge of, he did linger in my shop. Stussy smiled and nodded. She did not dare to give inconsistent answers to Saint Roswader's questions. When Jaji heard this, his face was so gloomy that he almost shed tears. Seeing this, Warring States hurriedly said, Holy Roswader, let's go back to the topic just now. Capturing Rossi now is the most important thing. As for the issue of military strength you mentioned, there is actually a naval colonel in Rogue Town who has taken natural fruits. He is Zepha's disciple. Although his personality is a bit awkward, his strength is quite good. With his joining, plus Garp and Jaji, Rossi won't be able to escape this time. And Crane and Guion are also trying their best to rush to Rogue Town. Maybe they can also participate in the operation to capture Luochi. It was well known within the Navy that Cake liked Guion, and Sengoku didn't want Roswader and Stussy to continue to imitate Cake's mentality. HMPH. Let me trust you this time, Sengoku. Saint Roswaiter took a deep look at Warring States, turned to look at Stussy, and said, "You go too, and you must catch Rosie." "Yes, Lord Roswade." Stussy did not dare to refuse and quickly agreed. "Before that, can I escort you back to the Holy Land?" "Are you kidding? Of course I will follow you to Rog Town. I want to see with my own eyes the guy who killed my son is caught. But this is too dangerous. A noble person like you, Lord Saint Roswaiter, should not go to a dangerous battlefield." "Dangerous battlefield? What, do you think you can't protect me? Can I understand that the number of troops arranged to capture Luochi is still too small?" Stussy pursed her lips and was speechless for a moment. "Anyway, I'm going to book Rog Town this time." After Saint Roswaiter finished speaking, he turned and walked directly out of the door of the marshal's office. Stussy sighed and looked at Sengoku and Kaji. "This time, I hope we can all get what we want." After saying that, Stussy stepped forward to follow in the footsteps of Saint Roswaiter. As the supreme commander of Saint Roswaiter's escort when he went to sea this time, she could not let Saint Roswaiter get even the slightest bit of damage. She understands that if something unexpected happens again at her job, she would no longer want to continue working in the world government. "Wait, Miss Stussy." At this time, Jaji quickly came to Stussy's side and asked in a low voice, "Excuse me, what you said about Luochi's character earlier, did he really enjoy himself in Happy Street?" Stussy glanced at Jaji. "Rosie is also a normal man." Jaji stood there, watching Stussy's back gradually disappearing by the door, clenching his fists tighter and tighter. Navy Headquarters, temporary rest area for the Celestial Dragons. Outside the room, "Miss Stussy, I heard that you plan to join the Navy in the operation to capture Rosie. I wonder if I will be lucky enough to participate in this operation." A man with short purple hair and a leather mask on his face walked up to Stussy. "You are Spandam, the Supreme Commander of CP9. I didn't expect you to show up at the Navy headquarters by yourself. Why, do you think the three people behind you are capable of participating in the mission of capturing Rosie? Although Luochi came from your CP9, his current strength has far surpassed that of CP9 agents." Stussy glanced at Gabra, Nuri and Owl behind Spandam, with a touch of disdain in her tone. Although the CP9 agents are good, in the eyes of them, the CP0 espionage members, they are not good enough. They are just a group of people who have not even mastered domineering. If they really face the current Luochi, Stussy believes that they will not be Luochi's enemy. "Miss Stussy, it is precisely because Rossi came from CP9 that I feel quite ashamed that there is such a traitor among my men. My heart is extremely heavy. So, I strongly request you to let the three elite CP9 agents behind me participate in the mission. Although they are weaker than you in terms of strength, they have all gotten along with Luochi for a long time. Perhaps they can use this affection to expose Rosie's flaws." Spandam said solemnly, "If it's about friendship, I heard Rosie say that he has a good relationship with Khalifa over there. Why don't you send her here to perform the mission?" "Well, Khalifa is currently performing a very important mission, so she cannot participate in this operation." "Oh, it's the City of Seven Waters, the mission about Pluto's drawings. After so many years, you haven't given up yet, Spandam. Having said that, you want to participate in this mission so actively, is it possible? For Francis Drake's fleet, you want to take credit for this mission?" After hearing Stussy's words, Spandam sneered twice and fell silent. Just like Stussy said, after hearing the intelligence about Francis Drake's fleet and the connection between Rosie and Francis Drake, he then took up the idea of Francis Drake's fleet. Let them stay. Although they can't deal with Luochi, they can still deal with Luochi's friends. After some thought, Stussy finally agreed to Spandam's request. At least, the people who protect the Celestial Dragons have three more in their hands. East China Sea, Kokoja Village. As the Mary docked at the coast, Luffy and others jumped off the ship excitedly. "Miss Nami, I'm here to help you," Sanji shouted excitedly and immediately wanted to rush out. "Idiot, since Rossi is here, that dragon pirates must have been dealt with long ago." Zoro glanced at Sanji and said. Sanji paused in his steps and wanted to turn back to Zoro for reasoning. At this time, a beautiful figure appeared in front of everyone. "These are Nami's friends, I guess. I am Nami's sister, Nokigao. I'm here specifically to welcome you to the banquet." Noki stepped forward and waved to Luffy and the others with a smile on her face. Banquet, 203. Great, let's go there now. Luffy raised his hands in the air and shouted excitedly. Wow, I didn't expect Miss Nami to have such a beautiful sister. Hello, I am Sanji, the chef of the Straw Hat Pirates. Have Rossi and Miss Nami really defeated the Dragon Pirates? Sanji circled around and came to Nokigao, and asked with heartfelt eyes. Well, the crisis here has been resolved. Luochi specially asked me to come and greet you. Nokigao nodded, turned around and led Luffy and others towards the banquet point in Kokoja village. Soon, Luochi and Nami, who were sitting together eating meat and drinking wine, appeared in the eyes of Luffy and others. It's so cunning, Luochi, how can you hold a banquet first? Luffy quickly arrived in front of Luochi, grabbed a piece of meat with bones and stuffed it directly into his mouth. I'm sorry, Luffy. To express my apology, I'll give you this plate of food. I did it myself. Luochi smiled apologetically and handed all the dishes in front of Luffy. That's great. Luffy sat down with the food and smiled happily. At this time, he finally noticed the woman sitting on the other side of Luochi. Hey, are you Francis Drake? Luffy said in shock. What, Miss Drake? Usopp, Sanji and others heard this and ran over quickly. Heroic spirits are really convenient existences. Not only do you not have to worry about death, but can you be on call at any time? Speaking of which, Rossi, have you entered Drake's heroic spirit mimicry? Zoro picked up a bottle of wine and looked at Derek in red in front of him with interest, and then at Rossi who was wearing similar clothes to Derek and whose black hair turned into long burgundy hair. Drake was curious about what it would look like for me to enter the heroic spirit mimicry, so I gave it a try. Rossi and Zoro clinked their wine glasses and laughed. Ha ha ha, don't mention it. If I didn't know about Luochi's current condition, I would have thought he was my brother. Drake raised his hand and put it on Rosie's shoulder, laughing. Rossi shook his head, looked at Luffy, Zoro and others, and began to slowly talk about what happened when he and Nami came to Kokoja village. Especially the thing about Stacy. Luffy, everyone, we are going to Rog Town next, and after that, there is the Grand Line. My old friend Stussy will appear at the Navy headquarters at this time, probably because of me. So I think it's best for us to rush to Rogue Town as soon as possible to avoid being blocked by Stussy and the others who are setting off from the Navy headquarters, as well as Suru, Gion and others who are following us. When Luochi said this, his face gradually became serious. What, after finally escaping from that crane, are we going to face a new and powerful enemy again? Usopp put his head in his hands and shouted nervously. It seems that I have really boarded a pirate ship. Ever since I became a member of this pirate group, it seems that I have been facing powerful enemies at any time. Zoro sighed. Having said that, Zoro had no complaints in his heart. After all, his growth is visible to the naked eye. Hey, but we still want to have a party. Nami swallowed a big mouthful of meat and said tangledly. Don't worry Luffy, I'm not telling everyone to leave immediately. Let's go tomorrow, leave tomorrow. Let's have a good banquet tonight, and then we'll hit the road after we've had enough rest. Although the warships of the Navy headquarters can pass through the windless zone and rush directly to Rog Town, it will still take a while to arrive. Luochi smiled. After fighting with Hawkeye, Gion and others, and traveling for a long time, he also needed enough food and sleep to restore his strength. Okay, let's have the banquet first. Luffy laughed loudly, letting go of his stomach and sweeping away the food in front of him. Zoro and Usopp also joined in. Sanji did his job and prepared food for everyone. Rossi, on the other hand, was led by Francis Drake and continued to drink wine. Gradually, even Luochi's system could no longer withstand the erosion of alcohol. It seems that my brother is a little drunk, so I will take him back to rest first. Francis Drake laughed twice, drunkenly helped Raza and walked forward along the street. I'll take you to rest. Upon seeing this, Nami stood up quickly and led Rossi and Drake to her room. However, what Nami didn't expect was that Drake did not leave after putting Raza on the boat, but fell next to Raza. Ms. Drake, what are you doing? Nami exclaimed, looking puzzled at Derek who held Raza in his arms and put his legs on Raza. Rest. What's the problem, Nami? But your condition is not very good. What's wrong is that they are all pirates on the sea, so they should live casually. Moreover, Luo Chi's current mimicry is similar to mine, which makes me feel a lot closer to him. As he said that, Derek hugged Rosie tightly in his arms, as if he planned to sleep with Rosie in each other's arms. Nami watched all this with her mouth wide open, and her heart became a little complicated for no reason. Nami, do you like Rosie? At this time, Derek suddenly asked. Miss Drake, what are you talking about? Rosie and I are just partners, there is nothing like that. Nami blushed and said quickly to Derek. In that case, why do you care about what my brother and I look like? I just think that Miss Drake, you are a woman after all. Haha, none of my companions on the ship treat me as a woman. Hearing this, Nami was speechless for a moment. She had met Drake's friends, and they did not regard him as a woman at all. Anyway, my feelings for Raza are just companions, not what you think, Miss Drake. Nami exhaled and said to Derek. Miss Nami, you are really cute. But as a woman on the sea, sometimes if you don't act decisively, you will lose something important. Derek raised the corners of his mouth and looked at Nami meaningfully. While Nami was thinking about these words, Derek unbuttoned his red coat and threw it casually on the wardrobe nearby. Nami's face turned red when she saw this. Miss Nami, are you okay? That is. Haha, if nothing happens, let's come to and have a chat. Derek stood up, patted the place next to him with a smile, and said. The magic power that Luo Chi provided to me has slowly dissipated. In other words, I will return to the Hall of Valor soon. Since Nami you regard me as a woman, let's have an exchange between women. Without waiting for Nami to reply, Derek pushed Rosie to the back of the bed and pulled Nami to sit next to him. Although Nami was a little awkward at first, with Derek's guidance, the two gradually started chatting. As time passed, the night gradually deepened, and Nami gradually fell asleep due to the intrusion of thoughts. Derek chuckled, holding Nami's shoulders and making her lie down next to Rosie. And she herself stood up and walked towards the door. Nami will be embarrassed if you do this. Opening the door, Noki's smiling face appeared in front of Drake. Then, do you want to stop it, Nokigao? It's better. I also want to see Nami's expression when she wakes up tomorrow morning. And that kid also likes Rosie, doesn't she? I do have quite a good impression, but if no one supports me, this good impression may only remain on friendship. But is it too little to encourage me like this? Otherwise, I might as well just give it to you directly. Throw it in the bathroom. If that's the case, Mr. Roche aside, Nami might catch a cold. Really, let's forget it, haha. Derek smiled and patted Nokigao's shoulder, and faint golden particles began to emit from his body. Drake, what are you? Don't worry, I'm just going back to where I should be. Is that so? Why don't you go say goodbye to Luffy and the others? There will still be a chance to meet them in the future, so there is no need to say goodbye. Nokigao, remember to observe the expressions of Luo Chi and Nami tomorrow, and be sure to tell me when we meet again. Yeah, I know, Derek. When Nokigao finished speaking, Drake's body and the bodies of Drake's crew who were eating and drinking in the banquet hall all turned into golden particles and dissipated. Nuauchi raised her hand and stroked the golden particles, looked up at Nami who was sleeping on Raza's chest in the room, and looked at Raza's gentle face with a sigh. I really didn't expect that the great pirate Francis Drake, who has a bounty of 500 million berries, is also Rossi's power. Nami has really found a reliable man. I don't know if I can find such a reliable man in the future. Nokigao smiled softly and raised his hand to close the door. And the moment she closed the door, Nami opened her eyes again. Really, forget it about Drake, why is Nokigao like this too? Nami pouted and looked at the man beside her. Humph, don't get me wrong, Luo Chi, I don't like you as much as they say. Just think of it as a reward for helping me this time. Nami raised the corners of her mouth slightly, stretched her head close to Luo Chi's face and left a lip mark. Then he closed his eyes again. She didn't notice that the corners of Luo Chi's mouth did curl up slightly at this time. Time passed quickly, and soon it was dawn the next day. The early morning eyes shone on Nami's face through the cracks in the curtains, causing her to slowly open her eyes. Are you awake? Let's have some breakfast, came a gentle voice. Nami looked up, her tiredness disappeared instantly, and she suddenly woke up. Looking at the slightly cool clothes on her body, she blushed instantly. Even though she was as open-minded as she was, Nami couldn't help but feel a little shy when she thought about how she slept with a man while drunk last night. Luo. Luo-chi, we didn't do anything yesterday. Nami pursed her lips and looked at Luo-chi, who was already dressed now, with a blushing face. Luo-chi, Nokigao. I saw it all last night. Nami, I didn't expect you to be so bold. It seems that I will become the elder of the child soon. You see, this is what Luo-chi is doing. A breakfast of love prepared by you yourself. Before Luo-chi finished speaking, he was interrupted by Nochigao. She handed the food in Luo-chi's hand to Nami, with an even more envious look on her face. Nami opened her mouth, looked at Luo-chi, and then at Nokigao. Her face had completely turned into the color of a red apple. My child, can't you? Nami lifted the sheets and stretched out her hand to hold her belly. Did something really happen last night? Single quote. Luo-chi didn't know what Nami was thinking. He raised his hand and patted Nuo-chigao's forehead gently. That's enough, Nuo-chigao, I'm scaring your sister. You two say goodbye. Well, I'm going to make preparations for sailing first. Luo-chi waved to the two of them and walked out of the room. Nochigao stuck out his tongue playfully at Luo-chi's back. Nami, please try it, Luo-chi's love dish. Love, cooking. No, Nokigao, tell me what's going on. Guess. Nualq patted Nami on the shoulder and said. But I have to remind you, if you don't want to, I'm going to do it. Whether it's this love dish or Luo-chi. As he said that, Nokigao looked like he was going to use his chopsticks to cook the food in his hands. Seeing this, Nami quickly stood up and grabbed the food. I won't let you snatch it away, Nuo-chigao. Nami's look made Nokigao cover her mouth again and chuckle. At this moment, a tragic voice suddenly sounded outside the door. Razi, you rested at Nami and Nokigao's house last night. Hearing this, Noki raised her eyebrows and looked at Nami. This is Sanji's voice. The morning sun shines across the vast sea. A ship with a huge hull and a dragon logo is sailing quickly forward. A man wearing a hood stood at the bow of the ship, looking ahead with a stern expression. If Rossi were here, he would definitely recognize the man in front of him as Monkey D. Long. At this time, a young girl with short orange hair, wearing a short dress, high heels, and a small hat with goggles walked behind the dragon. Chief, do you think we can find Mr. Roach? The young girl, Kurla, asked the dragon worriedly. According to the information obtained, he should pass by this sea area. If nothing else happens, we may be able to find him. Long nodded slightly, and although his tone was calm, there was a bit of expectation. I really didn't expect that Luo-chi would appear in the East China Sea. If I had received the news earlier, I would have come to look for him and ask him to officially join our revolutionary army. I don't know if he will accept our invitation now that he has become a pirate. Bello Betty, the commander of the eastern region of the Revolutionary Army, dressed in red, walked over at this time. Like Long and Kella, both of them have expectations for Rossi to become a revolutionary army. Definitely, Mr. Rossi has put forward so many theories that are beneficial to the revolution. The leaders say these are epoch-making theories. Now that Mr. Roach no longer works for the world government, he will definitely join us and contribute to the revolution with us. Kurla's eyes were shining, and her tone was full of determination. Speaking of which, Kara, you once performed an infiltration mission and were caught by Rossi. Did he just popularize those revolutionary theories to you and then let you go? Didn't you ask him if he wanted to join the revolutionary army? Bello Betty asked curiously. Of course I invited Mr. Luo-chi to join the revolutionary army, but at that time Mr. Luo-chi said that he still had acquaintances in CP9 and did not want to go against them. Kella shook her head regretfully. Whenever she thought about her failure to invite Rossi to join, Kurla felt deeply regretful. Thankfully, Rossi has now been forced to leave the world government, giving us another chance to re-invite him to join. Accompanied by a steady male voice, a figure fell from the ship's pole and came to Kara, Long and others. Official second in command of the Revolutionary Army, Chief of Staff Sabo. Chief, Kurla, Bello Betty, I have seen the melee, should we move the ship over now? Sabo laughed. What? Kurla picked up the telescope in her hand and looked forward in surprise, and she saw the melee in the distance. Great, Chief, Razi and the others are really there. Let's move the ship over now. Long nodded. Leave closer slowly, don't cause any misunderstanding. After speaking, a strange light flashed in his eyes. Others immediately followed Long's order and began to steer the ship closer to the melee. Razi, I didn't expect this man to join Luffy's pirate group. Single quote. If I really poach such a man from the Straw Hat Pirates, I don't know if this kid will hate me. Single quote. Long sighed in his heart, but thinking about the advanced revolutionary knowledge that Luo Qi passed on to the revolutionary army through Kurla, he felt that it was still necessary to fight for it. After bidding farewell to the villagers of Kokoja village, the melee embarked on a new journey, quickly heading towards Rog Town. Usopp, hasn't that cook come to his senses yet? Zoro walked out of the training room of the Mary and looked at Sanji lying on the deck with a frown. No, he has been like this since he saw Nami and Razi walking out of the same room in the morning. Usopp shook his head and looked at the corner of the deck of the Mary, where Razi and Nami were lying side by side on the armchairs, enjoying the sunbath. Then he looked at Sanji with great sympathy. Unlike Luffy and Zoro, who are emotional idiots, Usopp can clearly see that Razi and Nami are much closer than before. What a useless guy. Such a little blow is enough. I don't know if such a chef can support us in reaching the final island. Zoro shook his head, his tone full of ridicule. What did you say? Green algae head. Zoro's words made Sanji tremble and jump up. He turned around and walked towards Zoro. But soon, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Nami who was feeding Raza oranges. This scene immediately caused Sanji to kneel to the ground again. I'm so envious. Hearing Sanji's words, Usopp and Zoro on the side couldn't help but twitch the corners of their mouths fiercely. Hey, Vice Captain Luo Qi, you two should be more careful. Our cooks can no longer work. Seeing that he could not stimulate Sanji, Zoro turned around and looked at Razi who was also standing aside. Can you blame me? Razi shrugged and said somewhat innocently. Just when he was about to talk to Sauron about the matter, a red light flashed in his eyes. This is... Razi stood up from the deck chair in an instant and turned to look in the direction of the bow. What's wrong, Raza? Nami also stood up and followed Rosie's gaze strangely. Not long after, a huge dragon-headed ship appeared in the sight of Nami and others. What kind of ship is this? It doesn't look like a navy warship, but it doesn't have a pirate flag. Sanji lit a cigarette and walked to Rosie's side. Huh, are you feeling better, Sanji? Usopp asked in surprise. Haha, it's somewhat useful. At least it can cheer up Shen when the enemy attacks. Zoro chuckled lightly and placed his right hand on the hilt of his sword. No way, are we going to fight again? What kind of enemy is this time? Nami patted her forehead, feeling tired. Hee, it doesn't matter, I just didn't hit those fishmen. If there are enemies on the other side, I will beat them all away. Luffy bumped his fists and looked excitedly at the approaching ship on the other side. Luffy, let's forget it. Luo Qi raised his hand to hold Luffy's shoulders. After all, there is your father on the other side, and beating him away is unjustifiable. What, is that Luffy's dad's ship? Wait a minute, since it's Luffy's father's fleet, that means they're not enemies anymore. Usopp said while touching his chin. Idiot, Luffy's grandfather is a marine, and his father may also be a marine. If that's the case, we are also enemies. Sauron narrowed his eyes and looked at the approaching ships on the other side without letting go of his guard at all. That's what I say, but there's no way the ships on the other side are not navy warships. Luffy, since he is your father, why don't you tell me what's going on? Sanji blew out a puff of white smoke and turned to look at Luffy. Others also looked over, but Luffy's reaction surprised them. What, do I have a father? Luffy scratched his head and looked at Razi with some confusion. Idiot, everyone has a father, otherwise how would you be here? Nami patted the back of Luffy's head, once again feeling speechless at Luffy's mindless speech. Unable to get an answer from Luffy, everyone could only turn to look at Luo Qi. Don't worry, it's not the enemy. Luffy's father is not the Navy, but the Navy's mortal enemy and the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dragon. Luo Qi smiled. What, Monkey D. Dragon. How is that possible? Sanji accidentally cut off the cigarette in his hand and looked at Luoqi in surprise. What's so surprising about this? Elders can't decide the way out. Luffy can go to sea and become a pirate, but Garp's son can't go to sea and become a revolutionary soldier. It's all basic operations. Calm down, calm down. Luoqi waved his hand and said something casually, then walked towards the bow of the melee, waiting for the arrival of Heelong and others. However, as the distance got closer, Rossi's eyes were gradually attracted by Kurla standing next to the dragon. Really, it's been a long time. Single quote. Thinking back to the experience of Kara, who was once a revolutionary soldier, and rashly walked in front of himself as a CP9 agent, a trace of nostalgia flashed in Rosie's eyes. It can be said that the encounter with Kurla planted the seeds of leaving for Rosie, who originally planned to go all the way with the world government. This is not a basic operation. Garp, Dragon, Luffy, these are all a family of monsters. Raza, are you listening to me? Nami walked up to Rosie, followed Rosie's line of sight, and quickly locked onto Kara. Before Nami could ask anything, Kara jumped and flew straight over Rosie. Mr. Luoqi, we meet again. Kurla, who was in the air, opened her hands and landed directly in front of Luoqi. The open hands also hugged Luoqi's back. This made Nami's eyes widen for a moment, and she looked at Rosie and then at Kurla in surprise, and was confused about the relationship between the two for a moment. As for Sanji, the cigarette in his hand fell directly to the ground, and his whole body became petrified on the spot. Rossi patted Kurla on the back and was about to speak when he felt Kurla's body in front of him trembling. Great, Mr. Roach, nothing happened to you. I heard you killed the celestial dragon before, and I was worried that you would be caught. Now that I see that you are safe and sound, I am finally relieved. Kella raised her head, her eyes were very red, and a few tears were streaming down her face. Don't worry, I won't die that easily. Let me introduce you, these are my partners. Everyone, this is Kara from the Revolutionary Army. It's a friend I once knew. Rossi let go of Kella, turned to Luffy, Nami and everyone else and said. Hee, hello everyone, I am Kara, and I have a lifelong friendship with Mr. Roach. Kara's eyes passed over Luffy and others one by one, and finally stopped on Nami, CJEF. Facing Nami's suspicious eyes, she smiled and nodded. As they spoke, the melee and the Revolutionary Army ships finally approached. Long, Belo Betty, and Sabo jumped onto the deck of the Mary. This man actually came too. Single quote. Now things get interesting. Single quote. Rossi glanced at Sabo, then turned to look at Luffy. Sure enough, he saw Luffy looking at Sabo's face with a frown. Long first nodded politely to Luffy, Nami and others, then came to Luoqi and said. Your Excellency Luoqi, I finally meet you. The theory that Your Excellency gave to Kara is really breathtaking, and it also made us enlightened. After learning that you had judged the world government, we were looking for traces of you. Originally, all the people searching for you were in the North Sea, but I didn't expect you to appear in the East China Sea. And you have also joined the pirate group. I don't know if our Revolutionary Army still has a chance to invite you to become one of us. Long took off his hood and revealed his true face to Luoqi. As soon as he finished speaking, Luffy immediately looked away from Sabo's face and turned to look at the dragon with an unhappy expression. Hey, you guy, Rosie is my partner. If you say what you just said again, even if you are my father, I will not forgive you. Haha, don't worry, I'm just asking. Huh. What did you say? Dragon's eyes widened and he looked at Luffy in surprise. Sabo, Belo Betty and Kara looked at Luffy in surprise as well, wondering why he said what he just said. What's your reaction? Aren't you my father? But Luoqi clearly said that you are my father, my grandfather's son, and he also said that your name is Monkey D. Long. Luffy tilted his head, looking strangely at the surprised look on Dragon's face. Really, Mr. Rossi, you really know how to joke. How could the leader be Luffy's father? Kurla put her hands on her hips and pouted and said to Rossi. Haha, it would be so interesting if the leader was really the son of the naval hero Garp. But how is such a thing possible? Belo Betty shook her head and said with a chuckle. It can be seen that Mr. Luoqi is a humorous person. Sabo straightened out his manners with a faint smile on his face. Humorous, Razi raised his eyebrows, his eyes falling on Sabo's face. I have something more humorous to say. I wonder if this gentleman from the Revolutionary Army would be interested in hearing it. Since it is Mr. Luoqi's words, I am naturally willing to listen. Sabo nodded slightly, his words gentle and polite. It's nothing, I just want to say that in addition to Long being Luffy's father in the Revolutionary Army, you, the Chief of Staff, are also Luffy's brother. What, are you really Sabo? After Rossi finished speaking, Luffy came directly in front of Sabo, put his hands on his shoulders, and stared at his face. Well, I think you misunderstood, Luffy. Although I am Sabo, I don't have any relevant memories of you in my memory. Sabo smiled coquettishly. Even so, looking at Luffy's face so close, Sabo also had a trace of doubt in his heart. Did I really know Luffy in the past? Single quote. Sabo thought to himself. On the side, Long's eyes narrowed slightly. Although Kara, Bello Betty and others thought that Razi was joking about the father-son relationship between Luffy and him. But as a person involved, Long understood that Luoqi was right. Under this premise, what Rossi said about the relationship between Sabo and Luffy was not necessarily a joke. Thinking of this, Long walked up to Luoqi and whispered. Your Excellency Luoqi, can you lend me a moment to speak? Sure. Luoqi nodded slightly, said hello to Nami, Usopp and others, and followed the dragon to an area away from everyone. Sir Luoqi, how did you know about the relationship between me and Luffy? Of course it was investigated. Anyone who is interested can know about your relationship with Lieutenant General Garp. And Lieutenant General Garp is Luffy's grandfather. Isn't the father-son relationship between you and Luffy obvious? That's right. Indeed, as a former member of CP0 and now by Luffy's side, it is normal for you to understand this. I would like to ask, the world government and the Navy know the relationship between Luffy and me. Quote. Speaking of this, a trace of worry flashed in Long's heart. It depends on your father, Garp, and Sengoku. If they reveal the relationship between you, Luffy and him, both the Navy and the world government will know Luffy's identity. But right now, I don't even know about the world government. Actually, you don't have to worry about your identity causing trouble for Luffy. After all, the Straw Hat Pirates already have a problem like me among them. Luoqi raised the corners of his mouth and said with a smile. Hearing this, Long also smiled. Indeed, there is a man in the Straw Hat Pirates who killed the Celestial Dragon. Both the Navy and the world government will have sent enough troops to pursue them. In fact, the Navy and the world government do this. But every time, they would be repelled or fled by Eloki and others. What about the relationship between Luffy and Sabo? Where did you learn about it, Mr. Roach? Regardless of whether it's true or not, Sabo's affairs should be extremely secretive, right? There is no airtight dragon in the world. I feel confident that I can float on the sea without being caught by the Navy and the world government. Rossi smiled mysteriously, but did not explain clearly how he knew about the brotherly relationship between Luffy and Sabo. Naturally, things about the original One Piece cannot be talked about openly. To put it roughly, Luoqi felt that Long would automatically come up with a suitable answer. If it's true or not, let's do a test, Dragon. Rossi glanced at Luffy and Sabo, who were still communicating not far behind him. How do you want to test it, Mr. Luoqi? Long asked. It's not a big deal. Luoqi smiled mysteriously and then said. I think this Sabo seems to have lost some memory. I think he must have been greatly stimulated before. In this case, perhaps by giving him strong stimulation, he can recover his memory. If possible, I plan to do this. Luoqi came close to Long's ear and whispered his plan. After Long thought for a moment, he nodded and walked towards Kurla and Bello Betty. Rossi also walked towards Luffy, pulling him along with Usopp, Nami and other partners in a direction away from Sabo. Suddenly, Sabo was the only one standing alone in the middle of the deck of the melee. What are you doing? The leader asked me not to eavesdrop. Really, how mysterious is this? Sabo rubbed the back of his head in confusion, looked at Long, Kara and others on the left in confusion, and then looked at Rossi, Luffy and others on the right. Rossi, that person is really Sabo. He is really similar to before, but why doesn't he remember me? Luffy took Luoqi's arm and couldn't wait to ask the doubts in his heart. Luo Qi smiled and whispered what he said about Yulong in front of Luffy, Nami and others. Luffy, I plan to give Sabo a strong stimulation. I need you to cooperate with me later. I will attack you in an exaggerated way, and then I need you to show that you are seriously injured and dead. I think this way, that Sabo should be able to recall his past memories. In the original work, Sabo can awaken his past memories when he sees the news of Ace's death in the newspaper. Rossi felt that if Sabo saw Luffy's death in person, he would have to awaken his memory no matter what. Okay, just do it. Luffy nodded heavily. He believed deeply in his partner and didn't think that Rossi would really hurt him seriously. Likewise, he really wanted to make sure that Sabo was the sworn brother he once was. Rossi, is it really okay? It's not that I don't believe you, I just think Luffy's acting skills may be a big problem. Usopp came close to Rossi's ear and whispered his doubts. It's nothing, just let Luffy turn his back to Sabo and be stabbed by me, then fall on the deck. If you can't see Luffy's expression, Sabo will also be deceived by this trick. Rossi patted Usopp on the shoulder, then pushed Luffy towards Sabo. On the other side of the melee, Long and others noticed the movements of Luffy and Luo Qi and immediately looked over. Although Long, Bello Betty and Kurla were all a little nervous, thinking of Rosie's past and the fact that he was the first to throw out his plan, the three of them did not step forward to stop him. Both of you, have you finished talking? Really, even though I am not that Sabo, there is no need for you two to hide it from me. Laugh. With the sound of a sharp blade piercing flesh, a blood flower exploded directly in front of Sabo's eyes, interrupting Sabo's next words. He blinked and looked at Rosie and Luffy in surprise. But all they saw was a scene of Luo Qi with a ferocious look on his face holding a sharp blade and stabbing Luffy through the heart. The next moment, Luffy seemed to have lost all his strength and fell on the deck of the Mary with his back to Sabo. Sabo stared at Luffy's corpse for a few seconds, and suddenly a strong stinging sensation hit his mind. The memory fragments buried deep in his mind began to unfold before his eyes one by one, and finally settled on him, Ace and Luffy drinking sworn wine. Ah, Luffy, you actually killed Luffy. Sabo glared at Rosie, stepped hard on the deck with both feet, and raised his fist with boundless anger to hit Rosie in the face. Bang! Sabo's fist, which was condensed with strong armament and domineering, hit the short knife made by Rossi using projection magic, and a fierce air flow immediately erupted. The strong angry attack even made Luo Qi feel numb in his hands. Asshole, kill my brother, no matter whether you are useful to the Revolutionary Army or not, you will have to pay the price. Sabo's eyes were red, and he pulled out the iron pipe from his back with hatred and wanted to chop it down on Luo Qi's head. But at this moment, Luffy, who was already dead, suddenly jumped up from the deck, and stretched out his arms excitedly to wrap around Sabo's body. Sabo looked at Luffy who had come back from the dead, and was stunned for a moment. How could it be possible? Luffy, weren't you killed by Luo Qi? Sob, you are indeed Sabo. You finally remembered. Rossi didn't kill me. He just wanted to use this method to stimulate your memory. Stimulate my memory. Sabo looked at Rossi, just in time to see the short knife in Rossi's hand turn into blue particles and dissipate. Noticing Sabo's gaze, Rossi smiled and nodded to him. Sabo looked at Long, Bello Betty, and Kurla again. But they saw the three of them also had faint smiles on their faces. Sabo was so smart. Based on everything he had seen before, he immediately knew that he had been acted out by everyone present. Really, you actually use this method. Luffy, are your wounds really okay? Sabo asked worriedly as he looked down at Luffy's wounds. Don't worry, Luo Qi avoided the heart. This injury will be healed by just eating some meat. The corners of Luffy's mouth split open, revealing an extremely bright smile. For him who has gourmet cells, as long as he has enough food, this injury is not a problem. At this time, Sanji arrived at the right time with a large pile of meat dishes and handed it to Luffy. Let's go, Vice Captain, let's leave the space here to the two brothers. Sanji smiled, put his hand on Rossi's shoulder and walked towards Nami, Zoro and others beside him. Hey, Vice Captain Rossi, can I ask you a question? Suddenly, Sanji mysteriously said to Luo Qi. If you have any questions, just ask Sanji. You are familiar with Miss Kurla over there, right? She is indeed very familiar. You just heard my introduction to her. What, you want to pursue Kurla? Don't you already have Miss Nami, so I hope you can help me get to know Miss Kurla. As soon as Sanji finished speaking, a surprised voice suddenly sounded behind the two of them. What, Razi, do you already have a girlfriend? Sanji and Razi turned to look, and it was Kara who appeared in front of them. Well, Miss Kella, sorry, Mr. Sanji, you're not my type. Before Sanji could finish speaking, Kara smiled apologetically at Sanji, and then stared at Razi intently, as if she wanted to know the answer. Sanji froze in his tracks after hearing what Kurla said. This guy won't be devastated by this blow. Roche looked at Sanji, and at this moment, he seemed to hear the sound of Sanji's heart breaking. Just as Roche was thinking this, Sanji suddenly came back to life, looking behind Roche with a charming smile. This Miss Bello Betty, it's my honor to meet you, you are like. Sorry, Mr. Chef, if I have to choose a man, I would probably choose a man like Mr. Roche. Bello Betty took off his sunglasses and said to Sanji with a smile. As soon as these words came out, Sanji was petrified instantly, and after a second, his body softened to the deck as if it had lost the support of bones. I say, Miss Bello Betty, even if you want to reject Sanji, please don't use me as a shield. Roche glanced at Sanji, and looked at Bello Betty who walked to his side with a little helplessness. Hee, I'm not lying. If I really want to find a man, I hope to find a man who can be called a comrade. Coincidentally, Mr. Rosie is now known as the star of the revolution in the Revolutionary Army. It's hard not to be curious about you. Of course, maybe what I said will make some people uncomfortable. After Bello Betty finished speaking, he glanced at Kurla who was pouting and looking at him, and then glanced at Nami who was walking over with Usopp and frowning. Is your East District commander always so good at joking? Rosie shook his head and turned to look at Long. Well, to some extent, it is true. Long smiled. In addition, I have to thank you, Rosie, for restoring Sabo's memory. In this way, I owe you even more. Although it's a bit embarrassing to say this, but about your revolutionary theory. Hearing Long's words, Rosie nodded. While opening his suitcase, he took out a red book from the compartment under Bailey and said, I understand why you are here. Forget about joining the Revolutionary Army. I enjoy my days in the Straw Hat Pirates. Kurla, I didn't have enough time last time to tell you the comprehensive revolutionary theory. This is the book I will give you when we meet next time. I have written down all the theories I know. After that, Rosie handed the book to Kurla. Kurla took the book blankly, flipped through it for a while, and then handed it to Long. Long didn't shy away. He opened the book directly and read it in detail with Bello Betty. Kurla took Rosie's hand and walked aside. Hey, Rosie, are you really not coming with me? We have agreed. Kurla raised her head, her eyes full of expectation. We agreed to meet next time. I will give you the revolutionary theory books I have sorted out. I have never said since that I must join your revolutionary army. Don't mix too many things into the agreement. Roche raised his hand and flicked Kurla's forehead, smiling. But, in this way, won't it take a long time for us to meet again? If possible, I really want to work with you, Roche. Kurla wanted to fight for it, but Roche still shook his head. After all, his system is bound to the Straw Hat Pirates, but not the Revolutionary Army. Even if he wants to become stronger, he has to stay in the Straw Hat Pirates. Roche is our partner and will not go to the Revolutionary Army with you. You should give up. Just when Roche wanted to reject Kurla again, Nami walked between Roche and Kurla, looked at Kurla seriously and said, Mr. Roche, I have read the revolutionary theory book you gave me. There is no doubt that this will be a beacon of the revolutionary cause. In the future, we will definitely act strictly in accordance with the theory compiled by Mr. Roche. Long took Rock's hand and said excitedly, Haha, it's okay, after all, Kurla and I are destined to be together. In addition, if your revolutionary army can develop and help me take revenge on the world government, I will also be happy to see it. Roche nodded slightly and said, It's a pity that Mr. Rosie can't come to the revolutionary army to help. Well, Mr. Rosie, you have done enough. If we continue to ask for more, it would be too arrogant. Mr. Rosie, I hope that as many comrades as possible can see the theory you wrote. So I have asked Bello Betty to take the book back to the Revolutionary Army base. And I will leave after escorting you to the Grand Line. Long let go of Rosie's hand and said, Escort. Rosie frowned slightly. I let you say the word escort. Is there a force stationed in Rogue Town to capture us? That's right. Our Revolutionary Army has received news that the Navy hero Garp is now waiting for your arrival in Rogue Town. This turns out to be your father. He wants to kill Luffy and me in one fell swoop. Luo Qi was a little ashamed. Although he guessed that there might be a powerful navy waiting there in Rogue Town, he did not expect that the naval hero Garp would be stationed there. Facing Garp, even Rosie found it quite difficult. Don't worry, if Garp really takes action against you, Mr. Luo Qi, I will be responsible for stopping him. Long said solemnly. Really? Then I won't be polite, haha. Luo Qi laughed and patted Long on the shoulder. Since there is free labor, Luo Qi naturally does not use it in vain. After a while of exchanges, the melee set sail again and headed quickly towards Rogue Town. But this time, there was a dragon on board and Sabo who volunteered to stay and wanted to help. Although Kara also wanted to stay, she had to leave with Belobeti because she had other tasks. After sailing for a period of time, the melee finally approached the waters of Rogue Town. Sure enough, there is a powerful aura in this town. I guess it is Lieutenant General Garp. Rossi stood on the deck of the melee, looking at the lively Rogue Town with slightly complicated eyes. Since that's the case, then let's just leave, right? Anyway, there are still a lot of supplies on the ship. The worst thing is, can't we save some food? Usopp made his suggestion with trembling legs. Do you think we can sail safely on the sea without replenishing supplies in time when there are 2 big eaters on our ship? I'm going to buy some food. Usopp, please come with me. I can't move that much by myself. And don't you also plan to purchase some materials for making special ammunition? Sanji glanced at Usopp and put his hand on Usopp's shoulder. I don't have to. In fact, I have a disease that will kill me as soon as I get ashore. What does it matter? Didn't Long and Sabo arrive at Rogue Town first? If that Garp really takes action, Long will definitely stop him. Luffy, you come too. With that said, Sanji didn't wait for Usopp and Luffy to react, and jumped off the Merry with them and walked towards the depths of Rogue Town. Then, let me go and see if there are any suitable knives for sale. Zoro rubbed his shoulders and wanted to leave the melee. Wait, Zoro, what's the matter, Nami? We can't let you leave alone. You, a road idiot, will definitely get lost if you are alone. I've said it many times, I'm not a road fool. Nami ignored Zoro's complaint and turned to look at Rossi, who continued to perceive Rogue Town with his cognizance and domineering aura. Rossi, let's act together with Sauron. After Sanji and the others buy enough supplies, we will leave together. Although we have the help of Dragon and the others, it would always be good if we could leave without alerting the naval hero Garp. After hearing this, Luo Qi took back his domineering attitude and nodded to Nami. That's fine. I happen to know where the weapons shop in Rogue Town is, so let me take you there, Sauron. If nothing else happens, there should be a demon sword in that place, which may be suitable for you. The 3rd generation of demon sword, Kitetsu, accompanied Zoro in his fight against the 4 Emperors Kaido. Rossi didn't want Zoro to be unable to get the 3rd generation ghost because of his butterfly. Hey, demon sword, you heard good things. In that case, let's go quickly. The corner of Zoro's mouth raised. When he heard the word, demon sword, his original idea of going to the weapons store alone changed immediately. After Rossi and Nami set off side by side, he immediately followed. Rogue Town, weapons shop. Thank you for your patronage, a total of 3.26 million berries. The owner of the weapons store, Ippon Matsu, rubbed his hands and faced the beautiful buyer in front of him with a charming smile. 3.26 million berries, do you think this can be paid on my behalf? The beautiful buyer smashed a huge mace on Ipponmatsu's counter with a faint smile on her face. Ha ha ha, you actually asked our boss for money. I think you don't understand. Our captain is a big pirate with a bounty of 5 million berries. Just taking these weapons from you is already considered your good luck. How dare you ask for money? Captain Arita, why don't we take away all the weapons from this store and smash him hard? The beautiful buyer, that is, the pirates holding various swords and weapons behind Arita, all booed and looked at Ipponmatsu with a sinister smile. Boss, you see my crew members are saying this, what do you think I should do? Arita asked Ipponmatsu with a charming smile on her face. Because she has already eaten the slippery fruit, her smile now is enough to make men who like women feel intoxicated. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.